have 6 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting of the Olive Branch Planning Commission to order. If we'll have a roll call, please.
Pat Ward,
Here?
Leon Jones,
Here.
Janice Lewis,
Here.
Mark Lowell,
Here.
Diane Singer,
Here.
Johnny Steen,
Here.
Steve Stratton.
Here.
You've received in your packets the minutes of the March 10th, 2026 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions needed to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve minutes.
We have a motion by Mr. Jones to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Long. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Then the minutes have been approved. Our first order is under old business, we have a consideration of an application to amend the project text for Trinity Park Plan Development submitted by Al-Motassim Nassar on behalf of Mohib Nassar, property owner. The 16.21 plus or minus acre subject property is zoned PUD Plan Unit Development and is located at the southwest corner of Highway 305 and Church Road East, known as 8961 Church Road. The request is to add medical cannabis as a permitted use within Area 7 of the PUD, and it was tabled to this date at meeting of March 10th, 2026. We'll now have the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may remember, we tabled this because the sign was not posted. As you may have seen, the sign is posted now. Therefore, we're having a meeting. Again, this is an application to amend the project text of the Trinity Park Plan Commercial Development. The modification has been requested by the applicant and should not disrupt any of the existing baseline regulations for the current property. Generally, the impact on the neighborhood is not foreseen to be any more than any other commercial district where cannabis dispensaries are permitted within the city. Staff does recommend approval. Bringing you up to where we are now, we had talked about that during your opening. Church and 305. This is the intersection of CVS, the soccer fields. There's a BP here, vacant property. Some vacant property here, and you can see this PUD circles around and back to Bell Forest Drive. The Trinity Park PUD project text lists permitted uses that include development standards that address such matters such as setbacks, parking, accessibility, and landscaping. It does not currently include medical cannabis as a use by right or conditional use in any area. So a little background on the Trinity Park PUD. It was adopted by the Board of Aldermen in 2005. Currently, the acreage, as you discussed, is 193.7 acres. It spans along the southern portion, as you can see here, of Church Road for about a mile, beginning at the intersection of 305 and Church going southwestward. In total, the PUD has 8 areas or 8 sub-districts with different land uses for each area. I've got circled here the Area 7. It does say here neighborhood retail. That is a use within Area 7. On January 19th, 2021, the Board of Aldermen approved the final plat for Lot 1 in Area 7 as shown on the slide. This is the use of permitted, or this is the permitted uses for Area 7, as where the pointer is at here. You can see there's anything from an art studio to a post office, daycare center, print shop, grocery, drugstore, dry cleaning, doctor's office, convenience store, bookstore. You can see there's numerous uses there within Area 7, and adding medical cannabis would be alongside drugstore or pharmacy. This would only be for Lot 1 in Area 7. So Mississippi state law requires that medical cannabis establishments be at least 1,000 feet from the main point of entry into the facility to the nearest property line of the following 3 uses. There is a church, a school, and child care facility. There is a public park here across the way from the retail establishment. It does not name public places, or parks. There is also a CVS pharmacy here, which would be associated with a medical cannabis dispensary. So analysis, we could look at this. The applicant has provided a survey by Mr. Christopher Shea Skeen. He is a licensed surveyor. Mr. Skeen has certified that the main entrance, which is here, it is the second bay from the end. From the main entrance of prospective medical cannabis would be 1,001 foot 47 inches from the nearest property line, which if you trace this down here to LaBelle Haven's property line, this is the corner of LaBelle Haven at 4800 Mississippi 305. As I did state, public parks are not included among the protected uses. So the survey was completed. This was the only point that they could find to pull from. The rest of the points are either into vacant land, again, the park, vacant land, or up the road. So another part of the modifications, that the modifications are consistent with the standards and criteria in Section 14 on planned unit developments of the zoning ordinance. The requested modification would only add an additional land use, namely cannabis dispensary, medical cannabis dispensary. It does not change the lot size, setback regulations, height limitations, open space, buffers, and other applicable requirements that were approved in the original project text. Modifications have been specifically requested by the property owner. Modification has been requested by the applicant and should not disrupt the existing baseline regulations for the current property. Generally, the impact on the neighborhood is not foreseen to be any more than any commercial districts where cannabis is permitted in the city. And then modifications within the baseline regulations, transportation and public facilities. The transportation is at 305 is an arterial road, as you can see. Church Road's a collector road. We do not feel like there'll be any type of extra use to these roads. We also have two entrances into the property, one on 305, one on Church. We don't feel like that the traffic will be in any way affected. Utilities are already there, the building's already built. This is going into a leased space. Again, that middle building, second spot to the west. More analysis here. If approved, the project text amendment would allow a medical cannabis dispensary to occupy a leased space within the current multi-tenant strip building. It also has commercial businesses that are moving in. I see a T-Place, of course the gas station's going to move in, and then I see another building that looks like it's being occupied on the end for a Pizza Hut. Since no additional building or structure would be needed, a new commercial use like the proposed medical cannabis dispensary would not affect the strip development pattern of the site or the neighborhood commercial character and land uses of the surrounding area. We did talk about the park, as you can see on the slide and familiar with the area. The George M. Harrison Municipal Park is located across Church Road from the subject property, and the land use compatibility impact of the proposed medical cannabis dispensary on this particular piece of land can be construed as the same as the pharmacy across the road as CVS. So our next steps, based on your recommendation, the proposed project text amendment would be forwarded to the Board of Aldermen for their consideration. If approved, this would allow medical cannabis exclusively within the land area of approved Lot 1 of Area 7 of the Trinity Park PUD. Our staff recommendation, as I said, is to approve the application as requested by the owner, recommended by the Board of Aldermen, and approve the proposed PUD text amendment to allow medical cannabis as a use by right exclusively on Lot 1, Area 7 of the Trinity Park subdivision. So based on the following is how we came to this conclusion, 1 through 4. The proposed amendment is consistent with the intent and purpose of the Trinity Park PUD, specifically Area 7. The comprehensive plan designates this area as neighborhood commercial. The inclusion of medical cannabis dispensary as a permitted use is compatible with that designation. Number 2, arterial road classification of 305 and the addition of medical cannabis dispensary as a use by right is not expected to result in inadequate street capacity, nor would it adversely affect traffic volumes along 305 or Church Road. It would also create an unsafe access condition to the subject property. Number 3, the proposed use would not overburden public utilities, as you can see, drainage systems, community facilities, nor would it increase the risk of fire, flood, or otherwise endanger public health, safety, or welfare. Lastly, the recommendation is based on the location of the medical dispensary would at least meet the minimum 1,000 feet from the separation from the 3 legally protected uses. Again, those are churches, schools, and daycare facilities. That does conclude my presentation. Happy for questions.
Thank you. Any questions of staff? If there are no questions, do we have someone here that wishes to represent the application?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see some of you again. I know I've been here before. My name's Lauren Ward. I'm an attorney with Daniel Coker in Oxford. My address for the record is 265 North Lamar Boulevard, Suite R, Oxford, Mississippi 38655. I'm here on behalf of the applicant, and I have Mr. Nasser with me today. I will tell you at the end, we welcome any questions regarding the application or the business itself so that we can make you feel at ease about what's being proposed today. We adopt the position that staff has provided you. They gave you a pretty comprehensive report. It's very similar to the position that the applicant has provided in this case. I don't see any kind of contradictions between them. I do want to emphasize a couple points for you. This Trinity Park PUD was first approved in 2005. And if we can look back 2 decades, medical cannabis dispensaries weren't legal at that point in time. So this wasn't something that was kind of up for consideration or even included in Olive Branch's ordinance back 20 years ago. So that's something that I think now, considering it, that's something to look into is the age of that PUD project text. And in that same vein, when you're looking at Olive Branch's current ordinances, medical cannabis dispensaries are permitted uses in your office, C1 and C2 districts. And as you heard Jeremiah provide you with information, this is kind of a neighborhood district-oriented space in the PUD, this Area 7 and especially Lot 1. And so adding a use that's already permitted in a neighborhood C1 district is consistent with your comprehensive plan as well as your zoning ordinance at that point. The reason we're here talking about it is because this PUD had very specific uses. Though neighborhood-oriented, this just wasn't included. I want to also emphasize that this use is heavily regulated at both the state and local level. So tonight we're just asking for the ability to put this kind of use in this location, of this very specific lot and area location. But please understand that the permitting and licensing processes are really comprehensive at the state level, and even here in Olive Branch, there's a pretty stringent ordinance that my client, as the applicant, is going to have to follow before he can even develop in that location. And those state and local requirements include security plans, waste plans, management of the product, things of that nature that I think should put you at ease that this location is not going to be any more unsafe than anything else that exists in the kind of retail commercial space. We heard about this being a consistent use. It's just a use that's going to go into a leased building. So the building's not changing. It's going to look like what it should look like and what it already looks like. When we look at traffic, this location's already kind of got an established traffic pattern. You have 3 entrances into the location. You have a parking lot with substantial amount of parking behind those 3 retail buildings that are already built. So I don't think traffic or even access to this location is going to be an issue for anyone. And when you're looking at the utilities, we're talking about something that's going to use the same water, power, gas, those uses as a regular office building. This is not a location where they're growing the product or even processing it. It's already going to be heavily regulated by the Mississippi Department of Health. They will be sealing and providing the product that's then sold. And then finally, I really would like you to think about this application the way you would a drugstore or pharmacy that's already a permitted use in this PUD as it stands. This use is for medical cannabis dispensary. Individuals are going to have to get a prescription. They're going to have to get the prescription filled, then they have to leave. This is not a location where they can consume the product at the location or anything of that nature. So this is kind of a come in, have the need filled, and leave. There are other uses in that area that would put a lot more strain on the location as far as traffic goes, but this isn't one of them. And then to that end, I think those are all of the points we wanted to make. Again, I emphasize what staff's provided to you in their report. It's a good history of the location, and it's a good wrap-up of what's being proposed. If there are any questions we can answer on the applicant side, we are more than welcome to do so.
Any questions? I guess
Thank
there's
you.
no questions at this time. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for your time.
Okay. We will now open the public hearing for any discussion for anyone wishes to speak in favor or against this application. I would just point out we limit it to 3 minutes of anyone that wishes to come forward. And in the essence of time, just one trip to the podium, and also try not to repeat anything that has been previously stated. I do have a sign-in card, Mr. Dean Stewart, if you wish to come forward at this time.
Thank you so much. I'd like to begin by thanking the members of the Planning Commission for their efforts in leading our city. I know that you do this on a volunteer basis, and you do so because you love Olive Branch, and I am grateful for you. It is never my desire to speak about what other people need to do with their property, but I do feel I need to rise in opposition to this medical cannabis dispensary being across the street from the church that I pastor. My question I have this evening, and for you to consider, is what are our plans for Church Road and for 305 going forward? What's the vision that we have for that area? What is our desire for Olive Branch to look like? And I believe that if we allow a pot dispensary or a medical cannabis dispensary at this time, it's very much going to limit what is able to come or what would desire to come in to 305 and to Church Road. The church I pastor, LaBelle Haven, will be across the street. If I understand correctly, they went to the second bay of our property. That's our entrance. We share an exit. I don't know why we didn't go to the exit when we were measuring for 1,000 feet. Again, the church that I pastor has purchased and built $10 million worth of property over the last 12 years for the purpose of investing in our community and making our community a better place. We are finalizing plans right now to build about a $6 million facility that's going to house a respite care ministry for those who suffer from Alzheimer's dementia, so their caregivers can have a break, a respite, where they can go to the doctor or to the grocery store. They can get a break without worrying about their loved one. So it's going to be across the street from our church, and it's going to be across the street from the soccer complex that we've spent millions of dollars on as a city. Olive Branch has one of the finest soccer facilities in all of our area. The investments we've made in our area as a church and the investments that we have made as a city into our soccer complex is fostering growth in our area. It makes it a very desirable place for people to come and to live and to raise their family. And finally, this dispensary is going to go in between two entrances into Bell Ridge community, Bell Ridge neighborhood. Bell Ridge neighborhood is a stable, solid community. I work every day across the street from it. It's an older neighborhood that is continuing to thrive. And it's one of the few places in Olive Branch where a young couple can get a beginning in life with affordable homes. And we're going to put in between the two entrances into Bell Ridge a medical cannabis dispensary. You're saying it's you're saying it's 1,001 1/2 feet away from our church property. That's not protecting our houses of worship. A dispensary across the street from a soccer complex where children play ball is puzzling to me. I don't understand why that would even be considered. And to put one in between the entrances to Bell Ridge will do nothing but devalue that neighborhood and that property value in the years to come. It is not consistent in what is already there, and it is not compatible what has already been built. What has already been built is not compatible, and that is a justified legal reason in the state of Mississippi for you guys to say it's just not compatible with Bell Ridge, it's not compatible with our soccer complex, and it's not compatible with the church across the street. And because of that, I ask you to provide strong leadership and say, we do not want this at this time. We're not going to give you this spot zoning because we just don't want it in a place where it's not compatible. And I want you to know I respect you. And if you have a different opinion than I do, I reject your opinion, but I absolutely don't reject you. And we will work together in the days and years to come.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come forward? And please state your name and address.
Jarquis Rogers, A649 South Trinity Park, Olive Branch 38654. Hey, Mark. Hey, just want to come up and echo the pastor. Pastor, nice meeting you. We had several events at your location. Thanks for what you do in the community, and I totally agree. I do want to come forward. Mayor Adams and I were talking Saturday. We spent $4.7 million on the soccer fields. Trinity Park is my resident. I'm okay with the medical piece, but let's not try to be specific in comparing it to an actual pharmacy. It's selling a singular product that you can identify, and my basic concern for this is why, and Mr. Nassar, maybe some other location, but why this location? As the pastor just stated, we have LaBelle Haven, we have the soccer fields that we heavily invested in, worked with the Planning Commission a couple of years ago in developing that plan to say, hey guys, let's do something different in this area, and now we're going to bring a spotlight that's just unnecessary. My biggest concern, I'm a big proponent of Darby's. We got a sticker that says, keep Memphis in Memphis. I'm a big proponent of that. I know Mayor and I have some difference of opinions of what the need of the city, but I think we can do without. That's one of the conversations that we had this weekend. When you want to grow in a manner that's going to be prosperous and productive, then you got to do it strategically. And this just doesn't add to that. My residents will back up to this actual location. My wife and I are on different sides of the fence. I'm Republican, she's whatever, independent. But my point is, I believe in what I believe in, and I want to stand strong for law and order. That's what I believe in. No knock to the individuals who are attempting to provide these services for what I understand the need. I'm not insensible of that. But at the end of the day, the location, guys. I really need you guys to look at the location. Mark sit on the HOA board. I'm on the HOA board. I'm the treasurer of the Trinity Park HOA. I invite the mayor out. I invite my alderman out every year to our complex. I'm going to be looking right at that field. She's under the impression, hey, would Jark be open-minded? Does it look like a doctor's office? Do people really need this? Trust me, I've heard everything. But I'm standing here today before you to say, hey, let's just relocate. Mayor Adams told me about the other two that's already existing Saturday at the festival. Hey, Jark is here. Nobody's seen it. One church signed off because they had to get a waiver. Get it. I understand. But for this particular project, we're not rejecting the people or the project, as the pastor so eloquently stated. We'll have a difference of opinion, and we'll respect your opinion and just respectfully disagree. But at this time, I'm just coming to plead with you guys on behalf of my neighborhood association, as well as my neighbors who are not fortunate enough to be here. Hey, let's look at another option. This isn't what we want in Olive Branch, Mississippi. Growth is productive growth, and strategic growth is a lot better than just speedy growth, okay? You don't want every type of operation in your town and allow these people, well, not these people, but allow different type of riffraff to come in. You may have robbers come out, staking the place out. My house is right behind it. Something goes wrong. Something happens to one of my family members. It's very discouraging to me, very disheartening to me. So, guys, let's consider all aspects. And at the start of this, and this is my last point, that land was actually zoned for a multi-use commercial hotel facility when we first started. All the residents, we received all the info. That's been that way for over 10 years. It was that was the plan. We shifted the plan. I know you're new here, but the previous administration, I did share with him when they said, hey, a C-store. I was right in front of this podium at that time with the Board of Aldermen. A C-store. Hey, we don't need another C-store. The riffraff. FedEx is already bringing in it. We need the warehouses. I get it. I'm a part of that thinking as well. But the riffraff that it brings, those people speed out of there. They have the QT so dirty. The trash that they're throwing all over the place. They're just coming into our community, and then they're leaving us with the residue or the leftovers from what they left behind. So please, Chairman Dorr, please consider this a cry from the community that's tired of seeing tags of Tennessee. I'm dropping my kids off. I get cut off. It's Tennessee tags. We're supposed to have an ordinance toward that. That should curb those things. So let's try to keep Memphis in Memphis and not bring another business directly in my neighborhood that will affect the property value and the safety of our community and our children. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wish to come forward? If not, does the applicant wish to make one final statement?
Yes, Chairman, just briefly, I wanted to address some of the points that were brought up. First of all, I think there were comments made about this being too close to the church's location. The state has already set a statute providing a guideline, and this use meets that guideline. I know there was questions about how measurements were taken. The state statute measures from the closest boundary line of the church to the entrance of the location that we're proposing to you today. And that's what resulted in the survey that shows that it's over 1,000 feet away. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that. And it is, in fact, the state statute that sets these protected uses. I understand that park is not listed, but that's what the statute states. And so to extend this to be a protected area is not consistent with the law in front of you today. The soccer fields, I understand, are across the street, but they are also next door to a CVS. From my understanding, there's been no proof that that CVS has somehow harmed the soccer fields or placed a burden on that public utility facility to you all here in Olive Branch. So what I would emphasize to you is that there's been no showing and no proof that just because a cannabis dispensary would be opened up across the street, that would somehow harm those in the public park facilities. Again, I would emphasize that this is a situation where individuals with prescriptions for the product would be entering the building, receiving the product, much like you would at a pharmacy, and then taking that home or elsewhere for consumption, but not on the property, and certainly not in locations where they're not allowed to use it. Otherwise, there were comments about the neighborhood in Bell Ridge being devalued by this location. I don't think there's any proof to those statements. If there is, we'd love to hear it. Already there is a commercial establishment. There's now almost an existing C-store with gas. There will be other commercial uses, restaurants, things of that nature in that location. I don't know if I've heard comments that those devalue the property around the area. But this PUD has always been proposed to include commercial uses on that lot. And now we're just asking you to extend to an additional commercial use that Olive Branch is already permitting in similar districts across the city. Besides that, I would say that this city has spent, I'm sure, a substantial amount of money on experts to give you a comprehensive plan and a really comprehensive zoning ordinance. This use and what we're asking tonight fits within your comprehensive plan. It is within those neighborhood uses. That's where this location is. And these zoning ordinances have already found that you can have a medical cannabis dispensary as a permitted use within that kind of location. You all hired folks to help you get these drafted, help you get these ordinances and plans in place. I would ask you to rely on that money and those experts that you've already spent time with and go ahead and emphasize that position here. Otherwise, and I may let Mr. Nasser speak to this, the security plans in place, I think we heard the words riffraff, people coming across from Memphis, maybe robbing this location. Again, I emphasize that this is a heavily regulated use by the state and local authorities. There are security plans that have to go in place. I'm going to let Mr. Nasser talk about what some of those security elements are for this particular use, just so you have that information. But as far as I understand, there's been no proof that crime is higher at these locations. In fact, most of these security plans and items in place lower the need for police presence and actually lower the amount of crime that happens in that location. I'll let, you want to tell them what security stuff?
Good afternoon. My name is Al-Mu'tasim Nasser, and in regards to the security plan, a medical cannabis dispensary has to follow the laws placed by the state of Mississippi, and one of those is the metric system, which tracks all the products from the farm all the way to the consumer and everything in between. They're very strict about their camera system. They're very strict about the employees, about the training. They're very strict about how we store the products, how we dispose of them. And we intend to follow all those rules. I heard them saying riff draft coming from Memphis. The state of Mississippi already legalized THCA, which has the same effect as medical cannabis, but it's very illogical that someone would come from Memphis, passing all the gas stations which already do sell THCA, just to come to us, so they can be denied from entering because they don't have a Mississippi medical card. Also, we don't allow anyone to smoke on the property or even on the entire development. Robberies. For the city of Olive Branch is very safe. I doubt there's going to be any robberies, and if there is, we're not going to go after any of them. That'll be very dangerous. We'll just up our security even more than already is, and follow reports to the police. I also heard about the cost of the community and Trinity Park and everything the church is added to there, and they said throughout the years they added 10 million worth, and that's amazing. And I don't want to make it sound like 10 million is not a lot, but me and my father, when we built this shopping center, the shopping center alone costs more than 10 million. And having the shopping center and the medical dispensary over there will only increase the value of all the properties over there. Law and order. I follow all the laws. I always have. I've been working in business since the age of 12 with my dad, and you know, I've never gotten in trouble. He's never gotten in trouble. We've worked in Memphis. We've worked here, and you know, we've built plenty of properties. We built a $2 million gas station in the city of Nesbitt, in Hernando. We built another $10 million property in Coldwater, and we're planning to build a lot more in the city of Olive Branch. We live here too, so we wouldn't want to make our own community worse. That's really all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
On that note, I'm wrapped up. If anybody has any questions or anything else we can help with, we're here.
Any other questions? No
Thank
more
you.
questions, thank you. I will now just close the public hearing, and just remind everybody, our decision is basically a recommendation to the alderman, mayor and board of aldermen. They will ultimately have the final decision on this. So I will now direct it to any commissioners for any comments, discussion, or any motions that you have at this time.
I do have a question to staff. Can you verify the measurement that was brought up, that it wasn't, or that there was a closer location that we could have measured to that would put it within the 1,000 feet?
Understandable. Yes, sir. Here is the, and it's your exhibit 4, I believe, or 2. So here is the property line, the measurement point from the property line, and that has to be the closest property line to the protected use. The closest property line for the protected use is this corner here, so that's your northwest.
So the law says you have to measure it from the door of the cannabis dispensary to the nearest property line of the protected property. The nearest property line of the protected property. Not from the property line of the cannabis dispensary property, from the door. So you have to go to the unit, specific unit 2, that they're going to have the cannabis dispensary in, which is at this particular location. This is the Bear Heaven Baptist Church. This is the property line. It's at this location. So the distance from the property line, that is this northern property line, up to the door is 1,001.47 feet. So that's where you got that from. If it were to be measured from the property line of the Trinity Park property itself, then that will be from this red line right up to the La Bear Haven Baptist Church property. That will be less than 1,000, but that's not what the law says you should do. The law says you should go from the door, from the entrance of the dispensary to that property line down there.
And just for clarification, the state made that 1,000 feet and did not leave that to the cities to change, correct?
Yes, sir.
And this is cannabis, medical cannabis is allowed in C1?
Yes.
I know there's a lot of consternation out there about medical cannabis and not looking at it as medical cannabis, but looking at it from what we all grew up with and all of the bad things that it led to. I'm not a doctor. And one of the things that has to be considered is that the commissioners, we have to look at precedents. We have to look at the laws as they're written, and not really our personal opinion about medical cannabis, our personal opinion about what it leads to. That's something that the Board of Aldermen can do. But we sort of have a responsibility to protect the state from protect the city from a legal standpoint when we look at zoning. Zoning is a legal issue. Approving the application once it gets past our suggestion is more of a Board of Aldermen thing based on the voice of the community. So I hope that everybody understands that. When is if this was approved tonight, when would it go before the board?
It will be the third Tuesday in May. It will be on the board's agenda, third Tuesday in May.
Okay. Those are my comments. I welcome any other discussion.
Any other comments?
So it will be on the board's agenda on May 19th. That's when you have the public hearing.
May 19th?
May
May
19th,
19th.
6 p.m., same room. Permit me, Mr. Chairman, if I can take my seat back, to mention something with regard to the park, the public park across the street, because that has come up. I remember when we had the pre-app meeting with the applicant, That was one of the first things that caught my attention, was proximity to the public park. And I checked the law over and over multiple times. It doesn't strangely mention public parks. However, I should throw this caveat. There's a difference in zoning when you're dealing with zoning issues. You've got the uses that are legally protected, which you must protect legally. You've got other uses that you have to look at from the general zoning concept of compatibility. That's broader than legal protection. It's a broader concept than legal protection. If you were to protect the public park from a compatibility perspective, in other words, to say, does a cannabis dispensary and a public park go together, so to speak, from a land use perspective? If you were to say no, you have to justify what harm a cannabis dispensary puts on a public park. I did all the research in the academics, I couldn't find anything. I just didn't find anything. So that was something that we took into consideration in working on the staff report. If it is recreational, there is a potential that you have a negative impact if it is recreational. And that is why the project text, as proposed, must specify that it is medical cannabis dispensary. It's medical. So even if the state of Mississippi in future were to amend and say places of medical cannabis can now do recreational, you cannot have recreational in this particular spot until you re-amend the project text to allow recreational.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, one thing, just to reiterate Commissioner Jones's comments and to address one point that was made by a pastor when he was speaking. It gets very, very difficult, and also to reiterate actually what Asang just said, it gets very, very difficult to say that this doesn't fit within the neighborhood commercial designation when we, in our ordinance, we do allow it in office in C1 and C2, right? So if this property was designated C, if this wasn't a PUD and it was just generally C2, there would be nothing that, we wouldn't even be here today having this conversation. So I think from a legal perspective, that gets a little tricky. Do I agree with the measurement thing? No, but it's state law. And it kind of is what it is on that side. If I had my choice, I would be measuring from driveway to driveway, closest driveway, and that's about 500 feet. But that's not law. So our hands are kind of tied on that. Also, to Commissioner Jones's point, is our priority here is to operate within the law for the best interests of the city, based on our current zoning regulations, which, you know, after this may be worth looking at. But yeah, that's all I have to say.
And I'd like to say one thing too, just to piggyback on everything. It was mentioned that it is something that the Board of Aldermen consider things after we do. We do have to comply with the legal requirements, but the Board of Aldermen are there to listen to the community in more ways than we're able to. We're constrained by certain legal ramifications. So I would just recommend that you get your groups together, and for the May meeting for the Board of Aldermen, present your case. And I would just like to ask one other thing of the Mr. Nasser. Why was this location specifically selected? There are other locations in the city, and this is just such an iffy situation, because as Commissioner Singh said, driveway to driveway, it would be around 500 feet, but then also if it were C1 or C2, we wouldn't be here. This is something that, if you could just give us some of the reasons, some of your reasoning for choosing, other than you do own development, I believe, for choosing this location? Since you have other locations, it could go in.
One of the main reasons we chose it is, we are businessmen, and then we see where's the best place to place stuff. And the closest dispensary to the countryside, to the clients in the countryside, is a bit of a drive. So this would just be a big convenience for a bunch of them. Also, I want to mention most people that get injured are given medicines by hospitals, which almost all of them contain opium, which is a very strong drug. For example, you have the 7 tabs. You can sell, it's legal to sell the 7 tabs at gas stations. And I speak to a lot of the salesmen in the 7 tabs, and once the state makes them illegal, they're just going to change the name to 10 tabs and sell those as well. And those are loaded with opium. Like, you try one, you won't be able to get off of it. And they're very expensive. This is a lot less dangerous than opium. It's a lot more regulated. There's no loopholes. You can't just change the name and sell it again. It's the better alternative to what we already have. And that's it, really.
Okay, any other comments?
One of my concerns is the state says it can't be close to a school or childcare, but you can't get any closer to children at the park than this is. And that's one of my biggest concerns.
Okay, any motions from the commissioners?
I make a motion to approve the zoning or the PUD change.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Jones to approve the application subject to the requirements on the application from staff. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Lewis. Any further discussion? If no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, let's have a raise of hands. Those in favor, raise your hand. Okay.
I'm actually still.
All right, so those opposed? And then we have one abstaining.
I request a motion.
Mr. Chairman, by law, you have to vote. I'm sorry. The only way you can abstain is if you had recused yourself and you could not be present.
All right.
And so they have to, you participated in the deliberations. By Robert's rules, you have to.
I'll redo the motion again. All those in favor signify by raising your hand.
Based on the legality of all that stuff.
Okay. So it's 4, and those opposed, raise your hand. So it's 4-3 is the vote in favor, and so the motion carries, and it is approved. Now, once again, this will go to the Mayor and Board of Aldermen on May the 19th. So, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 2. We have consideration of an application for a zoning map amendment submitted by Michael Lebel, Allen, and Hoschel on behalf of property owner DeSoto County School District. The request is to rezone 42.5 plus or minus acres from PUD Planned Unit Development and M1 Light Industrial District to AR Agricultural Residential District. The subject property is located on the east side of Craft Road in the southeast corner of the future expansion of West Sandage Road and Craft Road, and it was tabled to this date at a meeting on March 10th, 2026. We'll have the staff presentation.
Mr. Chairman, Planning Commissioners, before you is a request to consider the rezoning of over 42.5 acres, sections of two pieces of properties located along Craft Road. So this is Craft Road North, this is Church. At this intersection, there is a convenience store with fuel pumps under consideration. Trinity Park subdivision that we just discussed is further to the east. Piece of property is about here. This is Nay Road. The FedEx warehouses will be at about this location. So this is the property area that we are looking at. It is not a subdivision lot. It is not a separate parcel at this particular time. The DeSoto County School District has acquired that piece of property and is the applicant for this rezoning. This area designated here in yellow, about 200 plus acres piece, is the Funderburg Planned Unit Development, Funderburg PUD. What the applicant proposes is to extricate or remove 35.99 acres from that Funderburg PUD in this area shown here in red, right up to this yellow line, to remove that from the Funderburg PUD and have that rezoned to AR, agricultural residential. That will be added to another small sliver here in this area that is zone M1 that is also proposed 6.51 acres proposed to be rezoned from M1 to AR, agricultural residential. So the 42.5 acres that you have is a combination of this 35.99 of the Funderburg PUD plus the 6.51 M1, currently zone M1 area, to both of them to be rezoned to AR, agricultural residential. The purpose of this rezoning is for the construction or the development of the DeSoto County Schools Career Technical Center East. Now there is the west, which is, I think is in Horn Lake, and that is full. The county intends to construct another facility at this particular location. It will consist of parking areas, 2 or 3 main buildings. So the proposed building, shared tennis court, and a shared track and field complex to the south. I should emphasize that the application before you is not to go from the Funderburg PUD to the Career Tech Center PUD. No. It's not, they are not proposing, the applicant is not proposing another PUD. So these plans are not binding by law. The AR zoning district is a conventional zoning district. The plans can change. So what you have before you is just a concept of what the applicant has to this point. The Career Tech Center, the programs that will be offered, multiple: student services, fire science, law enforcement, sports medicine, cosmetology, health sciences, automotive services, general support, linemen, logistics and supply chain, administrative building will be at the center, training in HVAC, assembly, and IT or information technology. This is a prototype of how the buildings will look like. So the exterior design inspiration, how the buildings on the property proposed to look like. So exterior elevation designs for the school. Interior designs. General landscaping of the site. So this is the inspirational elements. Looking at the rezoning criteria, by state law, there are 2 main rezoning criteria. The second is kind of in 2 parts with an and. The first, the board is, or the planning commission in this case, has to review the application to determine whether the current zoning of the property is a mistake. Mistake here is not a substantive argument. In other words, it's not that the board was adamant in rezoning the property to PUD made a mistake in its judgment, but whether the map, as we see it today, has some sort of a clerical error. The applicant submits that the long-term need for expanded public educational infrastructure was not fully anticipated when this property was rezoned to the Funderburg PUD. There is significant statewide and regional expansion of workforce development programming at a K-12 level that will warrant this rezoning. And the PUD district did not contemplate exclusion of public institutional uses that are traditional compatible with low-density districts. If you look at this particular piece, so this is the area of the Funderburg PUD being requested to be rezoned. You have Area 2, which in the Funderburg PUD was designated for mixed-use district. And then further to the north is a single-family residential area that was part of that PUD. What the applicant is basically saying here is, and this is very common, when you have single-family residential districts, often in that zoning district, you also have schools permitted. So if you go to our zoning ordinance, for example, the ARO zoning district, the RO1, low-density residential, the RO2, low-density residential, those permit schools by right. But he's arguing that this was basically an omission when this particular PUD was designed. Staff finds that originally this particular area was originally part of the Funderburg Family Planned Unit Development PUD. The text and the associated master plan was approved by the Board of Aldermen on December 15, 2015, and then it was revised on January 6, 2016. The Funderburg PUD, which is different from the Funderburg Family PUD, so the Funderburg Family PUD was rezoned to the Funderburg PUD on September 21, 2021 to create what you currently have in front of you. The M1 area, the little sliver area you have to the side, was rezoned from PUD by the Board of Aldermen in 2021. That was case number ZP210016. So the current zoning designations of the property are not a mistake. They are actually what the Board of Aldermen approved in 2021. So no mistake in the zoning district designation of the property is identified by staff. The second criterion, which is in two parts, requires that the Planning Commission find whether there's a change in the character of the area to warrant this rezoning, and not all, and whether there is a public need. The PUD designation for this entire property or the subject property area that began, as I did mention, in 2015. If you go back, the applicant submits that there's been increased warehousing, distribution, light industrial, and employment-based uses rather than mixed-use residential and commercial uses in the vicinity of the property. If we go back to 2014, about the time when the PUD was created, this is how the area looked like from a land use character. You mainly had FedEx, and then you had two other warehouses, one on FedEx Lane, and then the other one, I think that is where you have the Sonoma. QT has been constructed in this area right now. This is QT. From 2014 to 2026 today, this area has increasingly become light industrial in terms of warehouses. And those light industrial uses the feed of career tech in terms of workforce development. So the character of the area has significantly changed from vacant agricultural area to, light industrial uses that need the kind of services, the kind of education that career tech provides. Other areas still surrounding the site has generally remained agricultural, vacant agricultural land, which aligns with the ARO zoning district designation. Also, and importantly, to the south of this property, south of Craft and 305, currently you have a joint city-county venture. There is an expansion of Craft Road from a 2-lane to the 5-lane. That is a significant change in the character of that area, which will provide sufficient road capacity to bring in students in and out of this particular site if the career center was eventually developed. The second element to this second criteria requires the board to examine whether there is a public need for this rezoning. The applicant submits that there has been an economic shift towards workforce-oriented land use. Logistics-driven economy, increased demand for skilled labor, and growth in blue-collar and technical employment sectors. What a career tech will do is that it will fulfill these needs by providing workforce training aligned with nearby industry, reduce commuting burdens by developing local talent, and strengthen the economic sustainability of the area. This response focuses on there being a career tech on this property. But as I did mention, the rezoning is to take this to AR, not strictly to career tech. So any other AR uses can go on this particular site. Staff finds that the future land use map in the city's comprehensive plan 2040 designates the area as public, semi-public, and there is a small area to the south that is designated as Technology and Employment Center. The proposed Career Tech School aligns its public use, and the Technology and Employment Center designation, that particular use will align with the future land use map designation. In the city's comprehensive plan, the ARO district and the A districts are also used somewhat as holding zones for these kind of changes in future. So the proposed rezoning aligns with the provisions of the comprehensive plan. Based upon the finding that the character of the area has changed as discussed, and the future land use map, which articulates the city's public needs, aligns with the proposed rezoning, staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend to the Board of Aldermen approval of the proposed rezoning. First, extricate the 35.99 acres area from the Thunderbird PUD, being a portion of the Bridgeforth Heights property, Parcel 2, rezone that from PUD to agricultural residential, and also rezone the 6.51 acre of the Wheaton Land Corporation property from light industrial M1 to ARO district. So there are three things happening here. We're extricating 35.99 acres from the Thunderbird PUD, so you remove that. What that really means is anybody comes in future to do any other development on the Thunderbird PUD, you have to redo the Thunderbird PUD. Basically no longer exists because it no longer works. This whole 35 acres has been removed from it. The layout will no longer work. So that will basically needs to be redone in future. That concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions of staff?
I do. And this is maybe more of a process. Is there a step that we could take differently that doesn't leave it as AR?
You could recommend approval of a different zoning district from AR. You could. The Planning Commission could recommend a different zoning district. The Board of Aldermen can approve a different zoning district because public hearing notices have been provided and so on. You could do that. Now, if their intent, the reason this is going to AR, why the applicant requested the AR zoning district, you could do another PUD just for the school. The current zoning district work, zoning texts, workshops, and everything that we're doing, one purpose of that is to move us away from PUDs. In those text amendments, revisions that we're doing, we have created the institutional public district. So whatever this, if this rezoning is approved and the career tech is constructed on this side, the ARO district will eventually, this piece of property will eventually be rezoned by city initiated in that comprehensive rezoning of the city from the ARO to the institutional public district. This is what will really fit this piece of property, these 29 acres. So eventually, in future, that's what it's going to be if that rezoning is approved. In the interim, if you don't have the ARO, the other zoning districts that permit schools by right, the first is ARO, agricultural residential. The second is R1, single family residential. There you have houses and all of that really doesn't apply. The second is R2, still single family residential. It really doesn't apply. The third will be your R3, planned residential. There you need a project tax and all of that. You start getting. In the commercial districts, they are not permitted. And if you go from a zoning perspective, just permit me please pull this map. I think one of the reasons the applicant went with ARO is because across the street is nothing but ARO zoning designation. So basically what you're doing is simply expanding that ARO eastward into that particular area.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to AR, just, because our 2040 plan is public-private, but we don't really have.
We don't have a particular zoning district that really fits it.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why we are creating that institutional public district in the new zoning code.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
I know. If we just had an overlay.
Any other questions, staff? If there are no other questions, do we have someone here to represent the application?
Good evening. My name is Michael LaBelle. I'm an architect and project manager with Allen and Hoschel. We're currently designing the project, so I'm just here representing the DeSoto County School on their behalf. And you guys did a basic job presenting, so just here to answer any questions you guys might have.
Any questions?
You might not be able to answer this, but what kind of timeline are they looking at to getting this thing built?
We're trying to get the facility open for fall semester of 28. So wrapping up probably design to go out for bid probably in the next 3 or 4 months. It'll probably take 1.5 years to 18 months to build. So.
Okay. Any other questions? No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll open it for the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak in favor or against the application? If not, the public hearing is closed, and I'll now entertain any comments, discussion, or motions from the commissioners.
I'll make a motion to approve based on staff's recommendations.
We have a motion from Mr. Singh to approve, and that's to extricate the 35.99 acres from the Funderburg Plan Unit Development and rezone it from PUD to AR Agriculture Residential, and also rezone a 6.51 part of the Whitten Land Company to AR Agriculture Residential District. Do we have a second on this?
Yes.
Heard somebody over here. All right, we have a second by Mr. Stratton. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And then the motion carries and the application is approved. All right, now we're to new business. The consideration of an application for the final plat of Magnolia Auction Group submitted by Greg Russell, Civil Source, on behalf of property owner Christopher McCord. The request is to create a single industrial lot of 6.36 plus or minus acres. The subject property is on M1 Light Industrial District and is located on the northeast corner of Highway 178 and Blocker Street, known as 9490 Highway 178. I'll have the staff presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll endeavor to be brief. I'd like to first give you the site location, size, access, and the existing proposed uses of this site. The site is located across the BNSF Railroad right-of-way from the intersection of Highway 178, which is right here, and Blocker Street, which is right here. The proposed lot is plus or minus 6.36 acres, and there is no minimum lot area in the M1 Light zoning district, which is what this property is zoned. The proposed lot 1 would be accessed by a 50-foot access easement from Highway 178, which is right here, comes along here, and that is a recorded easement. Data book 100, page 296. This vehicular access easement does cross the BNSF Railroad right-of-way. The existing use is a vacant industrial site, and the proposed use will eventually be an auction site. So here's the proposed plat. As you can see, it's roughly triangular in shape, right here. Here's the access easement coming in from here. Here crosses the railway and it comes this way. I'll draw your attention to, there is a fire hydrant that's located along the eastern property line with a meter right here. Moving along, a little bit of background, most of which I've already covered. As far as the surrounding zoning and land use goes, Along the north side, there are single-family residences, automotive repair here to the east. To the south, along Highway 178, there are commercial businesses, and to the west is vacant and some commercial uses also, which are zoned C3 and C2. So as far as an analysis goes, the zoning, as I stated, is M1 Light Industrial Zoning District. There are no minimum lot area requirements, and the plat does meet all of the minimum yard requirements. As far as utilities go, the public gas and water lines are located along Highway 178. Private single service sewer and water connections do serve the property, and the city engineer has stated that no easements for these private connections will be required. The engineering department and public works are working with the applicant to determine if a water main along the east property line, which is what I highlighted previously, meets Olive Branch Fire Department flow requirements. So they're going to verify flow requirements for that water main, and the applicant is agreeable to a private hydrant replacement on this water main if the flow requirements are met during flow testing. Basically, they're modernizing that hydrant. As far as transportation goes, the access egress easement, which I also previously pointed out, shall require some improvements under the conditional use permit, which is being considered by BZA. So the next steps is, upon the recommendation by the Planning Commission, the final plat will be presented to the Board of Aldermen for approval. The plat would have to be recorded before building permits can be issued for construction upon this lot. And staff recommendation is, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the final plat for Magnolia Auction Group and recommend same to the Board of Aldermen, subject to the following. And we have four conditions here. Final plat should be recorded before any new construction. That's pretty standard. Improvement shall be responsibility of the developer and not the city of Olive Branch. That's also pretty standard. And as we discussed with the hydrant, we need to verify that flow requirements, it meets flow requirements as stipulated by the current applicable fire codes of the city of Olive Branch. And the hydrant shall be replaced with a current model hydrant as per the agreement between the applicant and the city of Olive Branch. And that concludes staff presentation.
Okay, any questions of staff? If not, I see Mr. Russell is here. Do you wish to come forward and represent it?
Greg Russell, Civil Source, 2696 Donwood Circle North. I don't have anything else to say or add, but I figured since I sat here through all that, I'd come up here and say hi.
Any questions?
I answer any questions you may have.
Any questions of Mr. Russell? Yeah, I was wondering how you drew the short straw or the long straw in the last tonight. But
I
anyway.
don't know. I actually did get placed first on the agenda.
Okay.
It's just
So you're
the held overs killed me.
You're first under the new business on that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I
Thank you so
appreciate
much. All right. No need for a public hearing since this is a final plat. I'll now entertain any comments, discussion, or motions from the commissioners. All right, we have a motion by Mr. Stratton to approve, subject to staff conditions. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Ms. Singer. Any other discussion? All those favors say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion carries. The application is approved. Thank you, Mr. Russell. All right, now we're at the point of the zoning ordinance update, so I will turn it over to the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At your last meeting, and included in the packet that staff sent out, you had, there's two main zoning ordinance proposals that came from one of the planning commissioners. We did give it out at the last meeting for your review and discussion at today's meeting. The way we propose to kind of proceed on this is this is code writing. Generally, you don't write code in public. So we'll discuss the ideas. We won't get down to the east was, comma, this and that. No, we're just discussing the concepts generally in terms of, is this something that the planning commission thinks is a good idea and we should incorporate in the zoning ordinance? Okay, we move forward with it, and then staff can write it in code form and bring it back to you, include it in your packet at the next meeting. So discussion today is really more of a workshop, so to speak. We ain't writing the codes. So the first proposal that you had was that we should create, or that the city should basically create a rural residential conservation district. This currently does not exist in our zoning ordinance. We have the agricultural district, we have the agricultural residential district, but we do not have a rural residential conservation district now. In the new zoning code rewrite, we took the agricultural residential district and split it into two. So you have the ARO and the ROE, residential estate. Residential estate are more like the next step closer to suburban development than your more rural agricultural residential. These will even be more rural than your ARO, as currently written, will be more rural than your ARO, based on the policies. The key concepts here. One, creating a minimum lot size of 1 to 2 acres. If you strike the ARO district, which is your least dense in the city, requires lots to be minimum 1 acre. So if you go to lots to be minimum 1.5 acre, this will be less dense than your ARO district. That's why I said this kind of falls between strictly vacant land, agricultural land, and your first zoning district that really has a house, which is agricultural residential, so to speak. The second will be sways permitted. This is street instead of curb and gutter. ARO zoning district, this is rural development, generally will allow open ditches in rural development character, encourages that character. Reduce street lighting standards, I will come to that. Minimum tree preservation requirement of 30%, sidewalks required only on collector roads, and density incentives that are tied to open space preservation. Let me give some staff comments on this, and then the planning commission can discuss. In terms of the minimum lot size, staff thinks a 1.5 acres minimum lot size will give this area the character of its own, distinct from the ARO district, 1.5 acres. That will create a density of 0.67 dwelling units per acre, maximum density of 0.67 dwelling units per acre. The ARO district has a maximum density of 1 dwelling unit per acre. So this will be 0.67 and 1.5. The swale is okay. They reduce street lighting standards. Sometimes the lower the street lighting standards, less lighting, that gives you more of a rural feel. But we have to take into consideration of where we live. In terms of, last meeting you had proximity to Memphis. Lighting is a significant element when it comes to safety in public streets. So I think it may not be a very wise or prudent idea to reduce the lighting standards in terms of luminous intensity. Now, there may be other standards with regard to what those poles should look like. That gives you a more residential character. So in the city, sometimes you have your longer poles, 35 feet high. In a rural residential area, you may want to have more of the small, design lights, that you have in some of your subdivision in the city, as opposed to the higher lights. Minimum preservation of 30%, that has got to be intentional. And if somebody doesn't want to preserve up to 30%, what should a person do? 30% can easily be achieved through clustered development. So there are ways to do this. Sidewalks required only on collector roads, that's okay. Staff doesn't find a problem with that. And then density incentives tied to open space preservation. If we have a maximum density of 0.67 dwelling units per acre, to be able to create an incentive that doesn't take away the rural residential of the character of the area or make it another AR zoning district, you may want to create two tiers of this. The first being, if you preserve, the applicant preserve 30 to 40%. So you're trying to give a preservation incentive. If you preserve 31 to 40%, then your density can increase to 0.88 dwelling units per acre. You're still below 1. And if you preserve greater than 40%, your density can go up from 0.89 to 1 dwelling unit per acre. That still keeps you below the 1 dwelling unit per acre and maintains the rural character. The caveat, the downside to this particular zoning district is the risk of creating sprawl. The general requirement in the city of Olive Branch, if you look at how much money the city is spending right now, extending sewer into the outskirts, into the newly annexed area, that is millions upon millions of dollars. Density enables the city to recuperate that money from user fees because sewer and water is usually you pay as you use it. So when you have large open lots and just one house on it, yet you have to extend sewer to that particular area, you create sprawl with very expensive public infrastructure from utilities perspective extended into that particular areas. So that is the downside in having this particular zoning, creating this particular kind of zoning district. That is staff's comment on this, open for Planning Commission's discussion.
Yeah, I agree with you. The recommendation is that we, hear what the people are saying. And if we're going to create this district, identify where those locations are so that because it's always not in my neighborhood. Why can't the houses be bigger? And I think, we're responding to a lot of the comments about the trees, and this is, tree preservation is, I think this is the first time that it's been stated in any of the zoning other than common open space, but actual tree preservation. And I actually, I like curb and gutter, and there's sometimes where you do a swale where you don't do a curb and gutter, but you frame the roads because it helps maintain the roads for longer periods, instead of having just open, or not abutted driving surfaces for long-term preservation of roads. But I think it all comes down to, great, we have these districts, where we're going to put them. And I know that's the next step. But you'd be surprised when the developers are looking and they see that you don't have this district, that if they do see that you have this district, then they can decide whether or not they want to come here or want to develop in the area. So not having a district is, it's better to talk about it and identify can it fit in the city of Olive Branch, and give developers an opportunity to go to those locations than leave the entire city open and hope that the developer puts it where we want it. And that's just a general thing.
I'll just make one quick comment. I live in a subdivision that has 1.5 acre and 3 acre lots, and it was developed, I've been there 40 years, this is a long time ago, but the main reason, because you had to have septic tanks, and you had to have 1.5 acre lot to have a septic tank. I mean, that was and also you could only do so many lots. But I will say we do not have sidewalks, which we probably don't need because we're so spread out anyway. You don't need that. And, gosh, where we live has a lot of trees in it. But, I can understand both sides of this issue here. So, anyway, I'll just make that comment on that. I will say where we live, we have no trick-or-treaters on Halloween. It's too, it's too far, too much distance between houses. So, it has its pluses and its minuses. I will say one thing about the trees is you do need, I would say more street lighting than normal because it is dark with the trees there.
And I'd like to outlaw sweet gum trees.
Yeah, I think just to reiterate Dion's point, it wouldn't hurt anything to have this district and then just let the economics decide on whether or not if it's usable or not, or if it's actually worth implementing and whatnot. But yeah, I think having it kind of gets in front of the 8 ball and just shows developers that if you're interested in this, this is here. This is an option, and it's going to be a lot easier to go through this. Once it's there, it'll be a lot easier to get to construction rather than having to spend 2 years coming up with a PUD and then going through the entire process and then having the feedback and everything going back and forth and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, we could have it, and if it makes money, it'll make sense. So let them figure that out.
I agree with both my colleagues here next to me, yeah. And I like the idea of the trees, but I do understand the point that you made about the costs more for your this rural development than AR. If you have like 40% trees, it's going to cost more for your dwellings. It decreases the amount of dwelling space you can have. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, ma'am. And it may be possible because the 30% preservation, or if you have incentives and you go above the 30% tree preservation, that is intentional. It will not be left for the property owner to decide whether they want to leave a tree when you then go to build the houses and you start deciding whether I want to leave a tree behind my house or 2 trees in the front of the house. No. The developer has to designate and say this whole particular area, I'm not going to touch any of the trees in here that constitute 30% of everything that, so you start getting into tree survey and all of that, which is okay. Sometimes even in our current R3 zoning district, we already have some provisions on that. So you can do a tree survey and particular calibers and you decide, okay, I'm going to leave this 30%. It's not going to be in somebody's yard. And in those particular areas, you may go in there and put a trail. There may not be a sidewalk, but in that particular subdivision, there may be a trail network in there, just walking in the bushes, stay away from the snakes inside there. So that may be value for places like that. Of course, from a zoning perspective or zoning code writing, yes, it's common to see, not very common, but it exists, to see it in zoning ordinances, districts that do not actually exist on the ground. So you don't have a particular piece of property on the ground that is actually zoned to that particular district in the text. But it's kind of there in waiting. The day that a developer likes it, picks it up and uses it, fine. So it's possible to create a zoning district of that particular nature. These can also be very useful and very applicable in areas where you've got floodplains, large floodplain. So you take a large piece of property, let's say a significant portion of it is all floodplain, and then you just have a little area where you can actually build a house. And the developer decides, I'm going to keep the whole of that floodplain at the back untouched. That will get you more than even 30% of the developable area, of preservation. So you can have, I see this very easily applicable, and that will be conservation. That will be conservation. This is very applicable in areas like that. So, all right, it seems that there is consensus on the board. It appears that there is consensus on the board that we should have this particular zoning district. And we'll write a code and bring it to you at your next meeting, incorporating some of the elements that staff has talked about. Thank you. Second proposal was that the city should create a highway corridor overlay district for the purpose of protecting long-term traffic flow, aesthetics, and property values along major corridors. Policy question being whether we want our major corridors to look intentional in 20 years or we simply want to be reactive to it. I wish this was in place when Highway 302 ever began, whatever number of years it was. But the concepts is that, or the policy provisions will be that we have shared access and cross-parcel interconnectivity. We limit curb cuts when you have subdivision of property. So if you are subdividing property and creating 5 or 10 lots, then you limit curb cuts. Monument signage standards, parking located behind or beside buildings where feasible, and enhanced landscaping along corridor frontages. I'll give you an example where this kind of idea fits in the Acre PD, where you currently have 7 Brew. I've never seen this amount of coffee drunk in one city in my life. Where you have 7 Brew and Slim Chicken coming in, which is the other, Harbor Freight, under construction. That is an area, one, it's on a major corridor. So if you just kind of picture that, it's on a major corridor. Slim Chicken doesn't have a driveway coming from Goodman Road. 7 Brew doesn't have a driveway coming from Goodman Road. They are all accessed internally through shared access easement, interconnectivity. So you limit curb cuts, you provide cross-access interconnectivity. They all have monument signage standards there. You don't have any pole sign in that subdivision. Maximum 12 feet high. Some of them don't even have freestanding signs. 7 Brew, for example, doesn't have a freestanding sign. Parking located behind or beside buildings where feasible. If you look at 7 Brew, it doesn't have parking facing Goodman Road. Harbor Freight has just a small parking area facing Goodman Road. Most of its parking faces Jericho. That's the name of that street? No, it's not Jericho. It's in Bethlehem, I think. The other internal street. So this is then you have enhanced landscaping along the corridor frontages. Harbor Freight has a lot of it. Unfortunately, erosion is already beginning around that slope. We have to work into seeing how to stabilize it. But this gives you an idea of what this particular policy is intended to achieve. The Board of Aldermen is also very, very forceful in requiring interconnectivity when it comes to the subdivision of property along major corridors, just because of what we have seen along Goodman Road. Another area that may resemble this is Zaxby's, Domino's Pizza, over here on Hacks Cross. None of them have direct driveway on Goodman Road. They're all accessed through interconnected easements, private drive to the back of the property. So this is another area that would fit into what is called for here. Staff comments. Now, overlay districts are a bit technical. The way overlay districts function is you have the underlying district. The Goodman Road corridor is a good corridor to apply an overlay district, because whether you begin from the city limits with South Haven right up to the county line, you've got multiple individual zoning districts. There is C1, C2, C3, M1, M2. There are multiple individual zoning districts. However, if somebody is driving through the city of Olive Branch from Marshall County right up to South Haven, you are going through one corridor across the entire city. How do you want this one corridor to look like, irrespective of the different uses that are permitted? How do you want it to look like visually, so to speak? How do you want the transportation network to look like along this particular corridor, irrespective of whether in a particular area you permit warehouses or you don't, or in an area you permit a large retail or grocery as opposed to smaller restaurants? How do you want it to look like? So a When you take this particular concept and you put it on the ground in the city, you start asking the question, where can this work? Where do I put it? Where will it make sense in the city? A gateway overlay district, overlay designation, from a planning perspective, we will recommend the designation of a gateway. It plays the same instead of just highway, and really emphasize the aesthetic factor of it. This is a gateway going through the city. And where do you have this in the city of Olive Branch? It's mainly 305 and 302. 305 still has potential with future annexation south to the interstate, from College, or really from Church, if you take it from Church. A lot of it is already developed to the north. There are still areas to the north that still have vacant land, going towards State Line Road, that can be developed. Goodman Road still lends itself, especially from Hacks to the city limit to the east, Marshall County, and future annexation, who knows. That still lends itself to significant development following this particular character. So we will propose a gateway overlay district. This just puts additional requirements on top of what you already have in the underlying districts. And to expand that, this gateway will lie over any property that is within 200 feet from the right-of-way. If you're further than 200 feet, you're almost not visible. You're kind of side streets. We would like to add the monument signage standards. Currently in the city, we have a policy of 12 feet high maximum. We can drop that down to 10 feet. The city recently used, I think, even 8 feet with the Murphy's gas station that was approved on Hacks and 302. The sign there is limited to 8 feet at that intersection. One of the elements we would like to add here and bring back before you will be the building architectural standards. I think that is key. We can take care of the landscaping, we can take care of the signs, we can take care of this, but if we don't take care of the architecture of the buildings, building architecture, then a lot will be defeated. And I think in the city we already have a lot of that architectural standard. If you look at QT, we impose those standards on QT. That is why it looks the way it does. So we'd like to add that and then bring it before you for consideration. Any comments, please?
Nope, sounds good.
I ate Slim Chickens today, so it's open. I think they need to change the street to Fried Chicken Street or something, because I eat there and Bojangles both. So, but we do need more developments exactly like that. It's good. It's good.
To touch on that point, using that development as an example, there's still like 2 curb cuts that come off Goodman there, right? That are not signalized.
No business in that subdivision is permitted to have a curb cut from Goodman.
Okay.
Directly from Goodman Road, no lot. All of them, you have 3 streets,
Okay.
Bethlehem, Jericho, and I've forgotten which one.
Streets.
They're public streets there.
They're all public streets.
Yeah.
Everybody, you have your driveway. The lots that immediately adjoin those internal streets have
Sure.
their driveway coming from those streets, or you have your access only through the cross-access easement in the front.
Yeah. So they're not direct accesses into the businesses, but there's still left turns being made off Goodman Road, right? Non-signalized left turns.
You can make left turns on
Yeah,
Goodman Road,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yes, you can make left
Pat
turns.
did it once.
I did once. I'll just mention, I come in from Kraft.
Yeah.
And I turn, I never reach Goodman Road. And it's
That
really,
line at 7 Brew might
it's
make
really
make
easy
it
to get
difficult
there,
to access
so,
all that stuff back there. But
like you say, chicken is there, so if you want chicken, it's there.
my only thought process is we have all this stuff in place that limits, obviously, yes, we want it to look cohesive within the overlay, but we also want to address safety as well at that time. I know Goodman it's a state highway, so a lot of that kind of falls on the state, but whether it's an access point into a business or whether it's a newly built street coming into a development, if there's a left turn there, people will take it. I know the intent is that, hey, have people turn in off of, what is that, Hamilton? One light is on
South
Hamilton. I think it's one's on Hamilton and then one's on Kraft. Ideally, you would say, hey, come this way, and then we funnel everything in there. But in actuality and reality is that really happening. Yeah, it is. It is. I'm not saying everybody's just taking wild left turns off Goodman like crazy. I'm not saying that. I mean, and then obviously this is Andy can weigh in way more on this, and traffic studies can, definitely address that a lot more. But if we were to utilize maybe landscape medians, at least within city streets, I know right now we're having an issue over there on, not an issue, but Pleasant Hill has wanted, I know Alderwoman Pat has, she's wanted that landscape median for decades and has been working on that for a very long time. And it is, I feel that landscape medians are usable tools for a municipality standpoint. Developers hate them, but the only reason why we hate them is because it kind of limits our ingress and egress and access points. But if you have a development like the Akery development where you have two hard corners and two signalized intersection access points, I think that alleviates all concern, all issues with that. So I feel like the utilization of landscape medians or as some type of median within this type of overlay district would help a lot with actually, I don't want to say forcing people to utilize the lease points of lease contention, but it would kind of make it a lot more sense in the driver's mind to, hey, let me just go this way instead of just waiting here for the left turn and whatnot. I've seen people make left turns out of developments that I was like, I never thought you would want to do this. Why would you want to wait 20 minutes to take a left turn out of here? But yet you do. So, yeah, but I think the landscape medians would help out quite a bit with that.
I think on Goodman Road, actually also 305 being state routes, and that was one of the considerations. If you start having left turns on signalized, those on signalized intersection, you start having too many left turns, you start having accidents, one or two things is likely going to happen. A study may show that it rises to the level of its, warrant analysis. You conduct a warrant analysis, a signal may be warranted. But then you look at how far each signal has to be from the other. If it is too close, the state may rather just come in and, put a median there to stop left turns. That's one possibility. If it is within city road, if we call this a gateway overlay district and you impose it on Church, because Church is really a gateway from South Haven, entering to Willie Brown's from South Haven. If you put it on Church and you take the commercial area in this same Pleasant Hill that we talked about, both the east and the west, the north, east and west of that intersection now will be very heavy commercial areas with left turns. You could come in on Church Road and put a median there to stop left turns, coming out from those businesses. So that would be something that the city will have to require at the time. If you're doing it on Church, for example, the city will have to require that at the time of platting and put that requirement on because that will be subdivision infrastructure development. If it is on the highway, yes, in approving that particular development, the city will need to work with MDOT. All right, looks like we're all good with this one. Thumbs up. All right. Proposal number 3, industrial residential buffer standard. So this is not about creating a particular zoning district. It's really about having specific standards when we have industrial uses that are close to residential areas. The purpose is to prevent future land use conflicts between industrial districts and adjacent residential areas. And the policy question we're dealing with is how do we protect residential property values while remaining business friendly? So we develop particular standards. 1, 100 to 200 feet landscape buffer where industrial abuts residential. Industrial here, there is no distinction between light industrial and heavy industrial. It just says industrial. Currently in the zoning ordinance, it's a 50 feet buffer. Berm and evergreen screening requirements, those exist already in the design review ordinance. And then you have lighting cut-off standards, those exist already in the design review. Noise standards at property lines. The city has a noise ordinance. And clear truck routing requirement. The city has a truck route requirement. So some of these are already covered in some of our city regulations. The current zoning code that we are working on will not address this because we are focusing on creating the districts. These will come into play when we are doing the Unified Development Code. Unified Development Code. That's where we're going to go into these details. Berm and evergreen standards, those are already included. Lighting cut-off standards. In the city of Olive Branch, you require the lighting at property line must be 0-foot candles, especially when you have residential. Sometimes when we have commercial, you allow a little speed here and there to light up the roads and so on. But when we have residential, we are very strict on that. You must provide a photometric plan that shows 0 at the property lines. Off the ground, in industrial areas, your light, in the commercial areas, your posts are not supposed to be more than 25 feet. In the industrial areas, it's not supposed to be more than 35 feet high. So irrespective of that 35 feet high, and you must cut it off at 90 degrees, irrespective of that 35 feet high, your light spread goes down. You're supposed to provide us the spot foot candles at each location across the entire property, right up to the property line. Sometimes we allow more lighting on the driveways. The average on the side is supposed to be 1. And of course, in the driveway areas may be brighter. Noise standards, the city has a noise ordinance that regulates how much noise you can make in this city. We've sometimes had contractors ask the question, can I work through the night and try to get this thing done? I have to catch up with time. The noise ordinance will not permit you to do that in the city. So some of these already have provisions, and then there are truck routes containing what I may call here the truck ordinance. The city designates truck routes. So when we come down to doing the Unified Development Code, we take into consideration significantly the widening of the buffer. That is really the key thing that will be a change if the Planning Commission is inclined to go with this. Any comments on this? No? All right. And at that time, we'll look at, because at that time, before we do the Unified Land Development Code, we'll have done the map itself. And then we have to look at where these 100 and 200 feet will apply and how it will affect the development of other properties that we still have in the city. Proposal in number 4, mixed-use neighborhood center district. Most of our mixed uses are the giant commercial area. Giant, I mean, 40 plus acres. For example, Dove Landing. We hope the Dove lands soon. So that is about 47 acres or so more. And then Wealth Hospitality, Oak Park Town Center. Oak Park Town Center, I think, is over 65 acres. This applies to the smaller mixed-use districts. For example, the one that Planning Commissioner Don is saying is doing out here, that's also about 3.5 acres piece of property or so. So that is quite small, that's quite unique. You can have this mixed use at little notes. You can have little notes, you allow them to have mixed use developments that permit commercial on the first floor, residential on the second floor, or maybe second and third, if you go to 3 stories on notes. You can have this. The key concept is to allow retail with upper story residential or office, reduce parking minimums, narrower setbacks to support walkability, small-scale live-work units, design standards for compatibility. What does the board think about this particular concept? We also need, of course, you have the design standards, who have to add architectural standards and clearly define that in the code. If we go this particular, and I think these staff had already begun working on something similar to this. The reason being, we're looking at, for example, the 3.5 acres mixed-use development that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Since we're moving away from PUDs to conventional zoning district, to what district are we going to eventually rezone that to, that particular piece of property to? What we have currently as the PUDs, the mixed use, will not work. The size is too large.
It's to that point, I mean, it's so difficult to just apply just one thing to every single, whether it's 3 acres, 5 acres, 6 acres, 7 acres, whatever, but because some things might work in a certain area and some things may not work in a different area. So that it gets a little difficult, I think, from that perspective. But just So mixed-use neighborhood centers, like, you know, these things became really, really popular about 7, 8 years ago, right? Like, I think, something like that.
You mean in the city?
Just overall in development, in the development world, like, I mean, it wasn't really it was only I'm sorry. It was, it was predominantly utilized around like universities or like downtown centers and things like that. So for rural communities like our Olive Branch, it just became a bit of a thing over the last like 7 or 8 years, I think. I think more so in larger cities, it was a common concept. And I think it came about really for us is to kind of, because there was so much pushback against apartments, that this was a way to provide attainable housing and not have to pay, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but people that couldn't afford housing or to purchase a house or didn't want to purchase a house and whatnot. This provided them an option. And that was great. The business model worked. But right now, I can tell you that we've kind of hit a, and this is just where we're at in the economy, is that it just doesn't make financial sense anymore. Olive Branch is being it's classified as a rural community, I guess, but you know, we are having growth, but our apartment rental rate hasn't increased at the same pace to maintain that cost viability, right? So like, this made a lot of sense when we could build these units for about $100,000, $125,000 and whatnot, but just at Oak Ridge Commons, I mean, our last bid was about $220,000 per unit, you know, for something that we're gonna charge, that we can't charge more than $1,600 a month for. And at one point, $1,600 a month was top of the market, like that was feasible because we were building it for 100-something thousand. So it's, how long will this last? I don't know. I mean, nobody's got an answer to that, but I will say that today's construction costs and today's economic situations that we're looking at in the development world, we've really accepted those to be the next 5 to 10 year mark. Like, that's what it's going to be. So these things might not make financial sense, you know, and I get it. Like, these things emerged as a way to provide, you know, things that people needed, but I feel like there were so many restrictions put on them that it made it financially not viable anymore to execute that. So that's kind of where we're at with that, I think, and it makes sense in a neighborhood like, you know, we've got a project in Collierville that we're looking at, and I mean, the median rent there is like $3,000 a month, you know, and it makes sense there, you know, like because the market can sustain that, but our market rents just haven't, you know, kept up with where we feel like they should have been to justify it. So,
and sort of to not to counter that, but what the result is that, you know, apartment rental rates aren't going up, but home rental rates are going up, especially in the older communities. In those older communities, you've got people who really don't want to live in a house, but in order to afford something, they're living in a house. Now they're not taking care of their yard, they're not fixing their fence, because they're more apartment livers, but they're not getting what they want in the apartments. So they move to the older neighborhoods, a lot of them that are in the district I live in. And so without giving another option, what we're seeing is people move into homes or start just renting homes. And, you know, we can't wish that they don't. The city's got to be able to offer something. And yeah, the building prices for everything is too high right now. But we've got to look we've got to look 5 years down the road, and we've got to look in those areas, even in the city. You know, as big as we are, everything seems to be focused centrally, and that's where the prices are the highest. You know, but if we can find some areas where this might work that are closer to the employment hubs instead of the commercial hubs, that it might work. But failure to give rental options, I think, is a detriment to us. You know, where the people were talking about people coming from Memphis, yeah, because they can afford to live in Memphis, and they come here and work. You know, but we've got to be able to give them I hate saying affordable. What did you, obtainable, sorry. Obtainable housing options. So that's where I sit on that. But I think, what Donnie was saying is accurate. Right now, housing is just too expensive. But thinking long-term as a city, when we're not here, hopefully, somebody else gets to take this district and make some use to it.
Yeah. And also, just to, take Dove's Landing as an example, it's a lot easier to scale when you're building 200 units or 100, however many units they have, and you have a large development where all your streets and sewer infrastructure and everything like that is going to be spread out over, I don't know, I think at one time, what do they have, 100,000 square feet of retail or something way up there, way more than what they needed. But the numbers work a lot better at that. So, we really taking those same design standards and those same requirements and putting it on something that's a 50-unit property or a 40-unit property or even a 20-unit property, it makes it very, very difficult. And I get the flip side of that. The people are like, well, if I'm building 200, why aren't I held to the same minimum standards as this guy building 20 units? So it's a balancing act. But I think, in order to make these smaller projects work, something's got to be different.
Yeah.
So.
And it says allow retail with upper store, it didn't say require. They could go to it and say, well, I don't want to do the upper store residential or office. So.
Are there any particular, let's take the example of Oak Ridge Commons. Are there any particular standards required in that PD that make that project not feasible? Or let's say if you wish you had, if you were to amend this to make the project feasible, are there any particular standards that you want to eliminate?
Yeah, finding out the best, that puzzle of how much retail or how much office and mixing it in with how many amenities, that's a balancing act, I feel like, and I think in that one, just remembering back, it was we could only have a certain amount of percentage of the first floor as residential and whatnot. Well, if we're building 60 units, 45 units or whatever it was, or 50 units in a building, that leaves a really large first floor, and if you look at the percentage-wise, it's okay, only 10% or whatever it was. I can't remember off the top of my head what it was, but it's okay, well, we can put 2 units downstairs, and now I got to figure out what we're going to do with the other 12,000 square feet, left. And we can get creative and use it as larger amenities. We can build a nice little clubhouse or a meeting space or something like that. But those are still costs. They're costs that we're not recouping, rent on that stuff. So just really, being a little bit more reasonable with that retail or office concept as to exactly how much of that is required in whether it be 20 units or 10 units or whatever it is, I think would go a long way with that. I was talking to a friend of mine in Nashville. They build these type of developments all day long down in Nashville. But one thing I noticed is that at max they'll have one brunch restaurant downstairs. And or just a small, maybe over 200 unit, in a 200 unit building, they'll have maybe 2,500 square feet of retail space. And number one, obviously, they have a parking issue that we don't have. We have plentiful parking, which goes into our next point. But so that kind of limits them. But he also said when initially they started building it, they did have 7, 8, 10,000 square feet of retail space or office space, and it was just dead space. Yeah. Nobody would take it. So I think there's a cap on number one, what type of retailers will go into that type of development, and then how much you can charge for it, and obviously that's a developer problem that has nothing to do with our requirements and stuff. But going into the feasibility of the project, yeah, I think that's really the biggest thing that would help keep those costs in mind.
It would appear, therefore, that because the current policy here says allow retail with upper story residential or office. Is it your recommendation, therefore, that we have some residential on the first floor?
Yeah. And I echo that. I've worked on even in Texas, and Texas is blowing up, but even some of our requirements, you'd see 60%, usage, and that, empty storefronts, lead to emptier storefronts. And so we had to go back several times and allow less, commercial or retail in order to fill the space. And that's just commercial demand. It's not something that we could, dictate or decide, but there's, a lot of times where some, really big, we had one that was anchored by the Peabody Hotel that, didn't fill out. I mean, and you'd rather have a fight for it than to have empty space. And we also did, one of them was, instead of, we did behind the retail residential where it was facing two roads. So the retail was on an interior road, and then we allowed the residential to be behind it, where we required a whole facade on the back of it. It was a hot mess, but just to cut the retail requirements.
One thing also, now looking at, and I think we had one of these over here off of Goodman, was it Old Goodman? It was a focal point deal. And I think they had like 3 buildings in the back and then like 2 out parcels out front. And that technically classified them as a mixed use. That technically, but it was like within those buildings, there was only like 800 square feet of like retail or something like that in like one of the buildings.
Because I think they had the commercial in the front, they had one building that had commercial on the first floor, and residential.
And it was very minimal in that, and then that kind of, there was a little bit of pushback, like, it's like you're basically building apartments, but, but for smaller unit, I think they had quite a bit of units there too, right? Like 100-something units. That was a larger project, so I don't think that would be classified in something like this, but maybe putting like a size cap or a unit cap in this type of designation would be a little better as well. But I think having just residential buildings along with some sort of retail out parcels or something like that is not a bad idea, because I feel like as long as some of those buildings do have some sort of like aspect of retail or office or whatever it is, that would go a long way to helping out getting these things to cash flow too. Because like in the project we're working on in Collierville, like we're building townhomes just by themselves. They're separate. And then we've got an office concept as well within it. Within the 15 acres, I think about 6 of that is residential, and then like 3 or 4 is office, and the rest is commercial. And that's technically classified as a mixed use small, because the unit count's only like 60 units. So, but the residential is its own entity, it's its own thing, and then we've got an office area buffer, and then commercial in a hard corner. So I think utilizing, not just cramming everything into one building, may help a little bit as well to get the costs where they need to be.
There you go.
I've taken note of the units cap and to permit some more residential on the first floor, mix it with the commercial.
I know it's not what you want to hear. From a planning perspective.
No, for this small, and also the lot size, you need to have a lot size, a maximum lot size that allows this kind of development to take place. When you have them at notes, especially if you take the corner, you can have your commercial, sticking out of that corner, while the residential, even on the first floor, is further to the sides. And then you put a parking at the back, kind of like a courtyard for the residential at the back. You need to have a design that makes sense, like the one we're talking about in Nashville. I've seen some of them there. And also, your streetscape matters a lot in making this to work. If you create a huge setback with huge parking lot in the front, you defeat the entire purpose of making it look like a mixed-use development. It just looks like a Walmart, a neighborhood market Walmart, 2 stories neighborhood market Walmart. So the design element matters a lot. Part of the reason I think the city went towards mixed use as opposed to just having standalone apartments. Studies, and very many, have shown that mixed-use developments, have them strategically located, their crime rates are far lower than when you have just standalone apartments. The activity, continuous activity from the commercial piece on the first floor puts eyes, on that piece of property in a way that brings down crime. So that's one of the theories that supports why you have low crime. The lighting factor. And developers, in order to give the residents a sense of serenity, tend to provide a lot of security features that you sometimes don't have in standalone apartments. They install cameras here, they put a gate here, and all those security features that they are adding themselves tend to bring down crime. So those are some of the considerations that the city made in going towards having mixed-use developments as opposed to standalone apartments. And of course, that is going to lead us to the very next. Modernized parking and connectivity standards. I left that out. That goes to the Unified Land Development Code. I'll bring that back when we're talking about the Unified Land Development Code, the parking standards and the Unified Land Development Code. Now, the high quality multi-family developments, that's where I want to go, because this kind of links us to the development standards that are proposed for multi-family. The 2 main districts in the city of Olive Branch right now that permit multi-family development is either you do it in PUDs and have this mixed-use concept, or you have the R04 zoning district. There is no piece of property right now in the city of Olive Branch that is zoned R04 that's vacant. Our R04 land is basically 100% absorbed. So because it's in the R04 districts that the city allows stand-alone apartments, no mixed-use concepts. So it's 100% absorbed. The area where our city policy push towards mixed-use development. The proposal before you is to have stand-alone apartments, rental facilities, of a particular quality. That's what those standards are intended to achieve. So that is a kind of a reverse policy orientation from what you have in the comprehensive plan, take note, and what the Board of Aldermen currently favors. So this will be a bigger discussion with the board. The location criteria. Multi-family development shall be permitted only on arterial or major collector roadways within designated mixed-use nodes or commercial centers adjacent to commercial office or industrial districts, or within half mile of a designated employment center. Multi-family development shall not be permitted within established R01 or R02. In other words, districts that allow single-family residential development. What do we think about allocation criteria? What does the board, first, what does the Planning Commission think about the idea of moving away from standalone apartments that are not mixed use, having multi-family development only in mixed use context, to allowing them in stand-alone now, creating more R04 zoning districts, so to speak, that are able to stand alone in these particular areas. What does the Planning Commission think about that policy shift?
It's, I think, it's needed. We can't abandon apartments altogether, but I think it has to really be really, really specific sites. This does a really good job of saying, yes, it has to be close to either commercial centers or employment zones, employment centers, and like the thing we did today, the college, that qualifies as that, right? People that go there will probably need somewhere to live, right? And an apartment complex around in that area would make sense. But definitely, I get the pushback on being next to R1 districts and R2 districts. I get that too. It gets a little tricky. We had that one that was behind Kroger, which on one side it was a commercial node, and then on the back end was was the R1. So it's like, well, who's going to win this one? You know, like what do we do here? So I think having clear projections of like, hey, okay, we don't want it next to R1 and R2, but if it's this close to, if you're that close to a Kroger, like, I think you're already kind of there, right? Right? Like the apartments aren't really going to do much in that scenario to affect your property values or your daily life and whatnot. Or especially if you've got, smaller houses already within the vicinity of the larger homes and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, I think I'm for it. I mean, projects that are 250 units in size actually are financially viable as well, because you can scale those and those still, make money from a developer standpoint. So, yeah.
I'm probably the only person that's come to with these meetings that actually lived in an apartment. Based on what everybody says, I'm the only person who lived in an apartment that wasn't doing drugs or stealing stuff or whatever. But there's a need, and if you put the right requirements on it, and that's what it comes down to. What are you going to require? The look and feel, because that on-site management, what type of security. We had somebody come in here and propose doing background checks on their residents. The development didn't go through, but they made that offer. I mean, there's things that you can do, and we are a logistics, a warehousing, and service area, but we don't have any place for those people to live. It's just that simple. We can the people who come up here and tell us that their house is worth $500,000, and I get that, but that wasn't their first house they bought. And so I know it's controversial, that it's but I think that in our wise thinking, looking into the future, and again, the Board of Aldermen can say no, but I think we've got to do something that says, we've heard what people are saying, we've heard what, everybody just says they're okay with it, just not in my area. Well, at some point where, if all we do is wait for a developer to pick the area, they're going to pick it where it makes sense. Or if we say, hey, here's a spot, developer, we've got it for you. I think that we're doing a disservice if we don't start helping, eliminate or reduce some of the complaints or the consternation between developers coming in with great ideas that work and residents saying, no, I'm against it. So, let's find out where it works, or put together some ideas where, yeah, on paper it works, then look at the map and see if it really does.
I think the idea here is, from a public need perspective, you're looking at what is called workforce housing. And maybe if you go north of Pork Lane, for example, you have that whole industrial area there. You still have some vacant land east of Pork Lane. If you go in there and you create some workforce housing of this particular nature, what problem is not close to any single family residential home. You kind of put it right there in an industrial area, and we can develop the standards and put the standards in the text, and then get down to the key is when you get down to the map.
Mm-hmm.
Writing this in the book is easy.
Yep.
The book is easy. The kid is going to get down to the map and you start asking the question, where am I going to put this? That's where the big question is. We can create a zillion zoning districts and write all the standards and put in them. That's fine. It's a book. Where are you going to put it on the ground? That's really where the element comes to play. But in terms of just standards, just looking at it in terms of standards, do we think these are good standards? You know, when you start looking at it on the ground, where you want to put it, you may decide, okay, it only exists in the book. For now, I'm not going to put anything on the ground until somebody shows up in front of me and I evaluate what that developer is proposing with regard to the standards. And these are minimum standards, which means the city can still has the opportunity to add others.
Do you have the facade requirements? What's A and B?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
A and B? We're looking at C and D. Is A and B the?
No, you have architectural standards on E. A and B was just a purpose and applicability.
Okay, so architectural standards.
Architectural standards are in E. That's our next slide.
Okay.
So just to touch on that, to me, I think if you want a local example of Silo Square is great. Schilling Farms in Collierville is great. I mean, really what you would never, if you looked at Schilling Farms, you would never realize it's like a 400-unit apartment community back there. You have no idea. You would not know that it's there. And I think a lot of that has to do with the design requirements, with the architectural standards, and the above and beyond landscape features that they require, their traffic inflows, egresses, things like that. And I mean, that's really the difference maker of like an apartment, a 400-unit apartment community looking like a garden community that was built in the 80s or something that was built today that looks like, I mean, to be honest, their newest phase looks like Santa Rosa Beach.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks beautiful, and that's because they wanted it to look that way, but also they had to work within the design standards of the city as well. So.
And this gives us the opportunity not to just arbitrarily say no apartments, and then we're able to control pretty much where they go, so developers know coming in, well, I can't just go out on Goodman Road and buy up this property and then hope for approval. Mm-hmm. They would have to meet all these conditions. I think that this sounds like a way to provide opportunities for people to work here and live here who can't maybe afford or desire to have a home, and yet not just be randomly in a neighborhood's backyard.
I was about to say.
Look at that.
I was about to say on the planning commission there is the east and the west. One side seems to be speaking and the other is.
I think with every single one of these things that you presented, you've developed a standard for what you want this city to be moving forward, and it's not it just gives a framework. I mean, so anybody can walk in and say, okay, I want to build this in Olive Branch. What will they allow and where will they allow it and what can I do? And I think all of these things are good. From the corridors to the, you're not saying you can't have apartments. You're saying this is what we would like our apartments to be. Doesn't mean you can't deviate from that in certain circumstances. But you have developed a framework, like you said, on this framework for what you want this community to be moving forward. And there's all kinds of evidences of places that did not do that. Look at South Haven, going down Goodman Road. You can look at Horn Lake. You can. They had no plan. They did not plan for what they wanted. They planned by development, just individual development. So that's a mistake. So I think all things you're presenting are good.
I think even in affluent communities, let me use that word. The apartments in Collierville, some under construction now, and high standards. Germantown. You drive in some of the areas, you look at an apartment like, is this an apartment or is it a condo? What is this? And then you go in and you see. And just the standard of the design sometimes control who lives there. It also controls price point.
Yep.
Somebody's not going to spend $20 million and come and put this beautiful and then turn around and rent it for $1,000. No, it also controls price point. Yep. And that has an effect on crime and some of the stuff that we're talking about. So it's If the standards are right, the location is right, it can be good. It can be good. And then you don't concentrate them in one area. That is the advantage of the city doing it. Instead of leaving it for developers to come in and you take the reactive approach towards rezoning. Because the risk that arises from there is you take one big area and you rezone it into R4, let's say R4 or high density residential area. And then is one apartment building beside the next apartment. It becomes like a university environment, right? And you concentrate all these apartments, multi-family. You're not very careful, you run into serious problems in future. But when you just have one or two beside each other and then you get into a different workforce area, you create one or two, you get into a different workforce area, you kind of disperse them, spread them, you reduce their impact significantly. Whether from a land use perspective, transportation perspective, crime rate, impact on property values, whatever uses may be around it. Now we're talking about a career tech. If you take a career tech area, the area to the north, where it was currently designated for single family residential, we turn that into two beautiful apartment buildings that meets these standards, that provides workforce for the industrial park. And there is a tendency sometimes for these career centers to eventually grow up into colleges. So you start having students living in that particular area. What kind of standards do you want them to look like? So there are things we can put in the books today to avoid the situation that Horn Lake and South Haven ended up with. Whether the Board of Aldermen goes with that, we shall tell them we shall say what the Planning Commission said.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Architectural and exterior material standards and unit size minimums. Exterior materials, minimum 75% masonry, that's common in the city. Varnish signing prohibited except as minor accent material, less than 10%. Facade articulation, building facade shall incorporate offsets, projections. Roof design, vary roof line requirements. Flat roofs must incorporate parapet variation. Blank walls, no uninterrupted blank wall exceeding 30 feet in length. That's an apartment in Collierville, I can tell you. Just reading that, you're going to see Collierville. Unit size minimums. 1 bedroom unit, minimum 700 square feet. 2 bedroom unit, minimum 950 square feet. 3 bedroom unit, minimum 1,150 square feet. Don't ask a planner anything dealing with these numbers. That's meant for building officials. So we just don't go into unit minimums.
So for those three, I can tell you they're more of, because if we're talking about minimums, then that kind of sways. That's more, what's there right now is more of like the average. It's closer towards the middle to the higher side of size-wise of apartments. I know older apartments are like 400 square feet, 450 square feet for a one-bedroom, one-bathroom apartment. But nowadays, I think you're right around like 650 to 700 square feet for like, but that's like on the higher end side. So if we're just talking about minimums, I think those numbers are just a touch too high. But if you want to just say an average of this many square feet or whatnot for a unit size, that I think these work just fine for that. But
You want to come down 50 square foot per?
Go higher?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably say on a one-bedroom unit as a minimum, just the bare minimum, I'd say like 600 square feet. And then like on a 200, maybe 800 square feet.
That puts you
or
at
something.
$100 a square foot a month, 1,600? Or what would that price point be?
That's depending on the development.
Yeah.
I mean, if you like, Carterville, average, the price rate's about $2 a foot a month. So, it's like 250.
Mm-hmm.
So, at minimum,
$2 a foot per month. So in Collierville, that would be $1,400 for that one bedroom.
Yeah.
That in Olive Branch may be about 1,000, 1,200.
Yeah, but like that's what like the numbers look like, right? It wouldn't be feasible. If it was 1,000 on one, that's not. Like I said, the one bedroom unit today is 700 square foot one bedroom unit. Once you factor in parking and everything, that's like close to $2,000.
I will do some digging on square footage, unit square footage for rental apartments in Olive Branch relative to this square footage and bring you some data at the next meeting and you can look at that and make some decision on this.
The main thing was because we're setting a minimum, so like, I mean, you can build 900 square foot one-bedroom apartment, and one,
Yeah.
the market said that there's demand for it, sure. But as far as the minimum goes, I think, that has to be kind of in line with the worst case scenario.
We need it to be attainable.
Yeah.
And not just build and live out there, nobody's going to rent it and live in it. But you also don't want a situation where you open up the construction of apartments in Olive Branch of this nature, and then they stand vacant because they are cheaper ones within the cities around us. And then we've just wasted our own land.
Yeah.
So that's some of the considerations that one needs to make. All right. Any other comment on both the architectural and the units?
Murals or like any sort of artwork and whatnot, do we have anything there? So I think that's becoming more and more standard. Like, I mean, like Stan mentioned, I'm building something in Germantown. They gave me an option. They said, hey, you can either paint a mural, or you can put up some sort of artwork, or you can pay like, there's like 0.005% of the whole budget of the project, donate that to the art council.
I think that will come under amenities, the next screen. So we can bring that under amenities, because part of that's where I'm going to talk about public art and how you beautify that side and make it look different. That's what we're saying.
So, but I will say this, I chose to just pay the fee. The reason why we did that is because their standards were so strict as to like the upkeep, and like the city was basically like, hey, we're gonna check this thing on a daily basis, and if something's chipped off, you got like 24 hours to fix it. And I was like, okay, well, let's just go ahead and fix it. But the lady was so like, the lady who said the art council, it was so heartbroken. She was like, I have yet to have a developer actually do like an art project. Everybody just cuts me a check. And I'm like, whoa, that's a good problem to
Sucks
have.
being
Like,
you.
But she was like, why? And I was like, your guys' oversight is just very, very, very strenuous. Like, it's already difficult enough dealing with, like all the other things that we have to deal with on a regulatory basis, but then adding that one other layer of paying on market was like, so the balance basically is what I was suggesting.
So parking and circulation. Parking shall be located to the side or rear of the buildings where feasible. This word "where feasible" is what an engineer makes it to be.
Yeah.
People can do anything on the side to make it feasible or not make it feasible. So it can open up to.
Except by exception? Is that what you're looking for?
Yeah, there really has to be, if their intent is to put parking to the side or to the rear, there really has to be certain criteria that you have to meet to allow it in the front. Second, surface parking areas exceeding 50 spaces shall include landscape islands at a minimum ratio of 1 island per 10. That's what we currently have in the design review. Garages or covered parking shall be required for a minimum of 25% of the units, so inside. Internal circulation shall provide emergency access per fire department standards, always required. I'm just going to take all of these and then we can talk at once. Buffering and screening. Where multi-family development abuts single-family residential, minimum 100-foot landscape buffer. Currently, the RO4, I think, is 40 feet, so that would be almost doubling it, which protects. Minimum 6-foot high masonry wall or decorative fence. You know, they specify what kind of fences be. These days, people take a wood fence and they spray it and they tell you it's decorative. They draw an apple tree on part of the fence and they tell you it's decoration. So berm with evergreen plantings at a minimum height of 8 feet at maturity. No parking areas permitted within 75 feet of shared residential property line. Amenities, let's take those two. Amenities is a very specific thing. So as far as G and H, parking and buffering are concerned, does the board have any particular comments?
Well, I wrote down that I'd like to see us consider an 8-foot rather than 6 foot, maybe 8 foot.
Minimum. 8-foot masonry wall or decorative fence. That sounds like.
Is that too much?
No. it sounds like every time that you had this kind of developments proposed in the city,
Right.
and what neighborhood say is that fence is too short.
Right.
8 foot is always kind of greater protection. So we see that as according.
Until you make it mandatory, and then it's gonna be 10 foot. Yeah, you said 8 foot, we need 10 foot.
I mean, that will become the requirement. It's kind of like fixed. Anything you want to do that goes above 8 foot, you're going to need engineers, structural engineers to do all kinds of plans, wind load and all of that. So you may want to, we'll come back with a standard that has 8 foot. Any other, and we're going to change that decorative fence from just being decorate, the way using the word decorative, to a Simtech Eco Stone or composite.
I think now, is this just a blanket of like anywhere you work with farms, you gotta have landscape buffer no matter what you're around, what zoning you're around? Because I mean, if we have.
No, but single.
That is if it abuts single family zone.
Okay, yeah.
If it abuts single family zone. If you abut resident, if you abut commercial, your buffer is going to be smaller.
Yeah.
You know, than the 100.
If you like, trying to think of you had like townhomes and then you got 200 feet or 150 feet between them. So we're trying to utilize land to the best of our ability, right? So 200 feet, 100 feet.
Now, what'd you say, 40
Top.
foot?
I'm sorry.
What'd you say, you said, earlier you said it was 40 foot for our R2, R1?
R1, R2, I think currently I think currently it's 50 foot
50
for
foot.
R2. If you have an apartment unit adjoining a condo, condominiums are generally considered multi-family. So they're all multi-family. You will not have that 100-foot landscape buffer separating the two.
Unless the people that live in those condos come here.
Of course. they need to be and there's certain provisions, and working on that, on protecting senior living facilities. Call them senior living restricted, age-restricted living facilities. They need to have their own protections of some sort.
I mean, the other thing is we get a lot of pushback on this with the magnet crime. That's one of the biggest things. Is having 100 feet between and a house that are different crimes. I don't see how that would play in other than a criminal having to go, well, I got to run 100 feet and then off a 8-foot fence instead of a 6-foot fence.
But
like,
that is,
on top of a berm, I'm gonna have to run up a berm, like.
but that is, you know, is in security, the farther you can see, the more that you can identify the threat.
We're putting a berm and evergreen trees in there so you can see.
Everything else is gonna reduce the crime.
But, the garages, that's good, I think it's, I mean, we can put 50% on that.
A tip,
Or some sort of permit farming.
yeah.
So you end up going from increase from 25% to 50%?
Yeah, it's feasible. I mean, I think that actually adds like it looks better.
Yeah.
Actually adds something to it.
Because if they're multi-story, the bottom story gets their garage, and then everybody, you know, then the second story gets their covered parking, the third story just walks up steps.
Look at the drawing.
Look, we'll kick it around.
Yeah.
Oh, west side? West side? West side.
Good. All right. Amenities. Each multi-family development shall provide a clubhouse or community building, on-site fitness facility, outdoor amenity space, pool, courtyard, or equivalent, minimum 10% of site dedicated to open space. You need a public art to add to the whole beauty of. Now, all these amenities, are we saying you have to have all of this, or
Yes.
all of it?
All of
Okay.
it. You're at 250 units,
you know, and that's, you know, yes. I'm gonna answer the question yes to that. I could diverge on how we do large developments.
If you, in this, you're talking about if the apartment hits the 250 units mark.
Isn't that what the standard is? 250 units? Or is that max? Max 250? Oh, okay.
So if you have an apartment that the guy only proposed 20 units, that is apartment,
20 units?
or 30 units, 50 units apartment.
We can look at some type of, I believe that, and this is just my belief, I believe if you're building apartments, you should have on-site, some on-site amenities.
Period. Agree.
Because if you don't, then it's not really living. So yeah, you know, on-site fitness facility. An on-site fitness facility could be the same thing you see at a hotel. You know, but yes, I believe that they have, you know, should have a clubhouse, should have on-site facility, outdoor amenity space, yes. And I don't think 10% dedicated open space is a whole lot of that.
I think if we, if we start calling out very specific amenities, that creates an issue where sometimes like, okay, things are in, like, yes, people may want them now, and later on, in 10 years, it may not be, the clubhouse might not be a thing, and the developer's like, well, I can take this money that I spent on the clubhouse and put 100% brick on the outside, or use that money somewhere else. So I think if you just call out a percentage of square footage that has to be dedicated to an energy space, and then whether it's, I mean, on-site fitness facility could be a pickleball court, or it could be a indoor gym, it could be, you know, volleyball court, whatever.
Well, the fitness facility's inside.
Indoor fitness facility.
Yeah. So maybe we do, you know, a percentage square foot indoor amenities, and then exterior amenities.
At least one exterior.
And not specifically named.
Correct. And then maybe up the open space to 20.
We have a percentage in our subdivision regulation for common open space, right? Common area.
In the R3 district, most of them are 10%. The general is around 10%.
Similar approach with and said, hey, the common open space has to be utilized for some sort of, you can't just have an open grass field. You have to like have it as some sort of common open space.
An active recreational area, or integrated.
Yeah, and that's, the number of developments that are put in, and I'm sorry I keep going back to Texas. When we built developments in Texas, there was a certain percentage that was dedicated to a park. And then they donated that park back to the city, then the city managed the parks. But then also that built up into our walkability plan and our trail plan. But it was obviously, you know,
I think
farther down the road.
I think if we told developers that if they dedicated certain parks to the city, we'd have a line of developers say, hey, we'll give you as many parks as you want. You know? So, I mean, yeah, and the city would have to make that and whatnot, but, I mean, or if there's a public-private partnership there,
Yeah.
something could be worked out, but, I mean, that would be very attractive.
You like that?
I think we'll look at this, to kind of open this up will be, you can look at a certain number of units. You require a certain number of indoor amenities, certain number of outdoor amenities. If you have 250 units apartment, for example, that is a significant population there. You want more amenities as compared to somebody who just has 50 units.
Yeah.
Indoors, that is vital because of weather conditions and so on. And then you also need the outdoor element. Providing amenities on those particular sites to reduce strain on city public parks. Because you're creating this amount of density, it reduces how much demand and strain you can have on public parks. And it also increases, it has its own value in reducing crime, because it creates that sense of activity on the piece of property.
Should we exclude basketball courts? Because we know what type of riffraff those
The next slide addresses lighting.
Oh, no, I've seen a couple of seniors fight.
The next slide addresses lighting and maintenance and management. And we talked about lighting earlier. This will come into play with the Unified Land Development Code. Full cut-off fixtures required. We'll mention that currently in the city, everything was carried over 90 degrees. Maximum light speed over a property line shall not exceed 0.5. Currently in the city is 0. You don't speed off any of your lights. Get it to 0 on your property line. 0 foot candles adjacent to residential districts. Maintenance and management. This is really where you control crime in a very significant way. On-site management office required for developments exceeding 100 units. Property maintenance plan shall be submitted and approved. Refuse collection area shall be enclosed with masonry screening. I think an open question here is, what do we want to see in that maintenance plan? What should a maintenance plan cover?
It should cover the, dedicated maintenance person, lawn contract, or, schedule, what's a long day? Frequency. Frequency, yeah. So, but, so even going up to 1, on-site management office, it should be, God bless America, my brain's not working, occupied on-site maintenance office. So not just an office, but there should be somebody in, during working hours, Monday through Friday, regular business hours for on-site management. And then the property maintenance plan should include, I think 100 units would qualify to have a maintenance plan, or maintenance man, or at least a maintenance contract where, residents can call and get it taken care of. But, and then the maintenance of the grounds. What's your schedule, frequency, upkeep requirements?
Would that, would that kind of throw us closer to like conditional use permit territory? Because like, if we had a conditional use permit for apartments or whatever, then that would kind of fall into that, where we could say, hey, we're part of the conditional use permit agency plan, and we could deviate from that plan. We have a method to, but it's difficult, like, if you push a conditional CUP with both on 250 units, what are you gonna do with 250 units? Like, you can't shut them down.
Well, we know somebody who can manage it.
How do you enforce? Yeah.
I guess it becomes submitted and approved, but then it also becomes a part of, we can make it a part of their leasing agreement. That way, the residents would have recourse if they're not following that plan.
I think one big thing that Memphis is trying to do right now is that a lot of property owners are looking for is more communication between the management office and the city's police department. Because right now, it's like, if something happens, they call the police to come and check it out, okay, everything's fine, everything's good. They can't do it. They can't do it. They can't issue a citation unless something is happening right there. But if you have a tenant with a record of, like, hey, this is like the 5th time we've had calls for you here, maybe some sort of citation, that, or at least the police can have a record of, okay, this has been a problem tenant in this area, or whatever going on. They're a little bit more aware of, honestly, I don't know how you would take enforcement action on that person. I mean, you probably put in your lease that, hey, if we have to call the cops on you over 4 times, we're not going to get you fixed next week, or whatever comes up with the bill, or something like that. And, yeah, but just having that paper trail of documenting like excessive issues with the tenant or something like that, I think would go a long way.
The thing about a conditional use is,
After I talked about the conditional use, I was like, no, it doesn't
Sorry, the words came out.
That's not gonna work. I think it's just more about the communication between management office and police department.
Yeah, that's,
I mean, at some point, we have to have faith in our police department too.
Yeah.
Right? But we have to give them the tools to be able to do so. We can't just say, well, we have called you this many times, and you've done it, and then they're like, what do you want to do?
I think Horn Lake has a registration requirement. There's some of the things that go into. I will find out a couple of things from what our surrounding cities are doing, in order to improve
And
the
it's,
safety elements and
yeah,
maintenance.
it'd be like a civil reporting plan or,
There is administrative burden that comes with that,
Yeah.
in terms of staff and so on. There is some material that I have already, but I will use in fleshing this out and then bring it to you at the next meeting to see. The maintenance plan element, it has a very private factor to it, and two, is something that most likely is going to change very often. Maintenance plan given to us today, in 6 months, it may not work. You get new management, they come in, they want to change all different things. We just need to have standards in terms of how the site needs to look like at all times. How they get there, we need to allow that to the private sector. It's like you take a single family property. What we have is your grass should not grow above 6 feet. How you cut it, not a problem. Whether you use a John Deere lawnmower or use Craftsman is not our problem. We just need to see it no more than 6 feet. So we can establish cleanliness standards, maintenance standards. And if there is any violations of those standards, then you get cited to city court. So the other part that we had was the other document that you had was suggestions regarding the Old Town District. So the Old Town Committee met, they did a lot of work for over 2 hours or more on the particular text, but at the end of it, they wrapped everything into one thing. Without an Old Town revitalization plan, we are putting the cart before the horse. We really need to figure out how exactly do we want this particular area to look like. And then we can write the rules to attain that. And I think the designated, was it two or three persons? So the proposal to the Planning Commission tonight would be for the Planning Commission to designate 2 or 3 persons. I think it was, Heather, can you remind me, was it 3 or 2?
the West Side said that they haven't really,
Okay, so the Old Town designated 3 persons. The proposal was for, which they had, and the designated 3 persons was that the Planning Commission also come up with 3 persons. And then we have already the working committee on the Board of Aldermen that is working on this zoning stuff. Let these 9 persons sit down and begin to, and of course, we have to present this to the mayor. The mayor will also be there, and begin to come up, figure out the whole idea of, is this an idea whose time has come, put it this way, to produce an Old Town revitalization plan. I give an example. One of the issues that came up was depot. If you look at some of the ideas that are contained in the document that you have and the way old towns and downtowns revitalize, you need to have walkability to make it work. You need to define the corridors very clearly. And then you cannot, when you define the corridors, you cannot write rules that apply uniformly across the entire district. So you start breaking down. If you are along the depot street, there are specific rules you have to meet because the plan calls for depot to look in a particular way. That may be different from if you are along Old Goodman, for example. You have to define your corridors, and you need a plan to achieve that. Pigeon rules may, I'm just throwing this out, you may get into a plan and discover that your best option for pigeon rules is for it to be a one-way street. Then your regulations have to change in the zoning code as far as pigeon rules is concerned. So just writing these rules without a plan for that particular district, we will be putting the cart before the horse. That was what Old Town, they come up with all kinds of ideas, but at the end, the conclusion was this is not going to work. You look at Old Town also, just from a land use perspective, we talked about the standards regarding the height of buildings. 3-story building on pigeon roads is totally different from a 3-story building on old highways in Maine. Just because of their topographic difference, it's going to look totally different. You may go down there and you permit 4 stories, but over here you only permit 2, you only permit 3. So we really need a plan to make this work in a way that is effective. The staff proposal, therefore, tonight to the Planning Commission will be that we have some 3 wise men and women,
Or ladies.
three wise men and women that will work together with the Old Town Committee, the 3 proposed from the Old Town, and the mayor and the Board of Aldermen. Those 3 others on the Board of Aldermen will have a kind of schedule a meeting and begin to work on this idea. If the mayor thinks we have to present this to the mayor, we'll do that tomorrow. If the mayor thinks, okay, this is a good idea to begin with, then that committee will meet and we go from there.
I'll sign it.
Okay? We have 1 wise man. I think the name of Planning Commission, Janice Lois, came up and we said no. If Old Town want, I know you were absent at the meeting. The committee was proposing you, and we said no. You're on Planning Commission. You may come in from Planning Commission perspective. I don't know. It's all up to the Planning Commissioners to decide. In terms of how many meetings this will be, so you basically have the first meeting that will be fleshing the whole idea. Is this something you want to do? And then that committee will eventually transition if the city decides that yes, let us do an Old Town revitalization plan. That's not something we're going to do in-house. We have to hire a consultant. So you have to go into the budget. You hire a consultant. That committee will become, you will get some other business and property owners within Old Town and add to that committee to create you the, call it the citizen revitalization, plan committee that will work. May end up being about 15 persons that will work with the consultant and planning staff in bringing that plan to life. So that's kind of your task.
So because I'm on the planning, the Old Town Design Review.
The Old Town Design Review Committee did not make you one of the committee members. So if you want to be, you can be. From the Planning Commission, you can. Mr. Chairman, this is under the rules, Mr. Chairman, under the rules of the Planning Commission, this falls under your authority. You've got executive order authority here on this one. You can appoint, you can ask, and you can, so.
Put names in a hat.
Yes. Put Donnie's name on all the pieces of paper. I got shit to do. It'll be lunch.
If I told my wife I picked up another service, I thought she'd throw me out the house.
Just don't tell your wife.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to mention is everything in here is very, all those things are very big pieces of making a very successful Old Town district, not just Old Town district, but a commerce district like this that has a lot of history to it. But I don't think any of it is accomplished without a parking garage.
Or just parking area. I mean, the walkability of that, it's probably the size of 2 Walmarts.
Yeah, but I mean, in order for those businesses to sustain and thrive and all the outdoor activities and stages and microphones, all that stuff, people are gonna have to come from other parts too.
And there is potential, there is potential. Sometimes your parking garage must not necessarily be inside the district, at the core of the district itself. Yeah. That may even help with walkability. So you have to go and park elsewhere and then walk through the district to get to places that increase the visibility and exposure of businesses within that particular district. There is room for, just looking at the map in front of us, you can have a parking garage right there. There are opportunities. There are different areas where you can put, you can come down here and this way. That's the bank.
And you
take part of the bank property and do something. They are just, you can go down here on the railway, the old railway property, take some of that frontage area and do something. You do that 3 stories, you go down, you come up to the road, and another story. There are opportunities within the district immediate and otherwise. The court area, this whole parking area often stands vacant.
Yeah.
So if you really look at, let us count the number of parking spaces. Even when I come here on Saturdays during the summer for farmers market, this area still stands vacant. So there is parking. The church property right here, it's got a huge parking lot that stays vacant apart from Sunday, a few hours on Sunday. So within the district and its vicinity, you've got a significant available parking that can be both public, private. All you really need to do is to define the walkable route.
Yeah.
If you take this
And then get the public to walk.
to walk, which is what you want to create. But for the public to walk, and this is where the plan becomes very essential. If folks, let's say the city came on and said, okay, let's use this and use this as public parking or to support parking in Old Town. When I park here and I have to walk down to the business here, what am I seeing?
Passing everything.
You know, what, it cannot just be a dead street. This is where public art, civic spaces become important. Attractions, things that I stop on this point and take a picture and do this and move to the next point. There is something that keeps you going within that particular district. Maybe you do that here and then over here there is a food truck. I don't know. There are different things that just keep the district active. That keeps the district active.
I mean, it's very similar to like Overton Square, right? Overton Square was very, it was very tough to get people to go until they built the Messian plus the big parking garage at the back. Right? So now Overton Square is not busy as it used to be. It's still, it attracts, that parking garage attracts more traffic to it because it's like a 2-second walk.
Second busiest location to Beale Street.
Yeah, yeah, and then, Beale Street, they just built that, the parking authority, built that huge parking garage, that was down the street.
Yeah, I do security.
Yeah,
Not a Beale Street.
Palm City Market in Atlanta, same thing. We're bringing people in, that's parking, but it's a balance of, we have the parking, but it's just putting it in a place where people feel comfortable, it's like, okay, I'm here and I'm part of this development. Because right now, if they're parking in the church, they're not part of it. I mean, yeah, the proximity is not that far, but it's from a customer traffic flow, it may as well be church down.
You need to, I think in the development style and the infrastructure, the amenities,
volunteering.
the walkability.
That's what I heard.
You initially served.
I heard,
Too much we can read.
I heard that Donnie is volunteering.
So we got
He said, yeah. He's in.
Is it Donnie or Mr. Mark Long? Which of the two is going
He
in?
gave a thumbs up. The first.
Unless anybody over there, you guys go for it.
The left hand of the father seems to be. What is
Yeah,
happening?
we sit at the left hand.
Seated at the right hand.
Yeah, we sit at the left hand.
Okay.
No, we're going down to the brewery.
Let's make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Nobody wants to leave.
We're adjourned.
Aye.